that though. Alright, it looks like we're live now. You guys should talk a little just so we can see if it works on YouTube. Actually, let me open up the thing.
So, which text are you reviewing this time?
Okay, so there's one that I was gonna do last week and then I decided not to, which is Margo Adair's "Will the Real Men's Movement Please Stand Up?" And I think this was written before Eminem, so she's not referencing that.
Yeah.
But that's what it makes me think of.
I don't think you're actually streaming. It says... Oh, wait. Maybe it is. Oh, it's weird.
Yeah, it says live on... Oh, it says live on the Streamlabs end. Let me just see. Let me see. What's going on? I might have a bunch of, like, other videos of ones that are dead, because I kept trying to, like, recreate and delete the event.
It is streaming. Well, it is streaming, but you should probably set up capturing the screen so, our Hangouts window is actually streamed, because right now it's streaming, like, black screen.
Oh, okay. See,
so, our Hangouts window...
Yeah, then I'm gonna listen to this
No,
and
is
see
actually streamed, because right now it's...
There's will... Okay, and I just played back some of it, and it sounds like... You guys can hear everybody, right? Okay, so then if I capture... I don't know how to capture the camera part.
To do it, you should add a source that is window capture, then select the window that is the Hangouts window, and it will capture it.
Let me see, because right now it's showing me... I have preview, mixer... Let's see, where's the... Okay, so video sources, I see it now. The problem is... Okay, so then how do I... Desktop capture? Display capture?
Window capture.
Primary monitor, secondary monitor? Maybe that'll do it.
Just window capture. Also make sure this window isn't minimized, because it doesn't allow to capture minimized windows.
Okay, so I think now it's doing the infinity thing, right? Yeah.
Alright.
Is it... Let me see.
Oh, you're capturing the OBS window.
Yeah, now it's probably just capturing whatever's on my screen, but...
Oh.
I guess we can just go with that. Or maybe I'll open up the Hangouts link, that'll reveal the link. And then anybody could just jump in. And that would be chaos.
Oh,
you're streaming in 480p, so it's not exactly... You should set up your OBS to broadcast in better quality, because 480p is kind of
garbage. I watch everything in 144p. 144p. That is, I am 144p fam squad thing. Yeah, I think I can set it to be just like a window or something. What happens if I change this? Oh, that makes... so I can make this real little, that I can add more shit. Oh.
Oh yeah, you see my screen where I have a lot of weird stuff going on, like, Oh, you can see it, but the viewers can't, because you are capturing the wrong window.
I know, yeah, I should probably have practiced with this a little. I just, in theory, I thought I was gonna sleep less, and then sleeping was too good. Let me see. So maybe I can. Okay, so I go with the. I just don't want to douche around with this too much, but I want to find something to. Okay, so I click the video thing. So maybe I can add another source.
No, it's like
like an image. At least just an image. That's not ideal though. Let's see. VLC source? No. Window capture, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just... Oh my god, this is awful.
Don't think you're capturing
I should just add more sources.
Well, I don't know what are you capturing, but it's not the right window.
I'm gonna add an image. I'm gonna add some images. Wait.
Well, being professional has never really been your style, has it?
No, I because here's the thing. So many people, they stay quiet they don't talk about stuff. They don't like to talk about things because they feel like, oh, I have to be so professional. Otherwise, it's nothing, right? But like all my favorite YouTube videos are just like people talking. You know, it's just people like doing the bedroom feminist style video. And I feel like, you know, if you throw things out there and you let things be a little shitty and then still you find, you know, a little bit of magic in it, then maybe that inspires other people to say, wow, that was like an awful pile of garbage and it was still okay. And that means I could do something like that. Are you guys seeing the drags of this cursor here?
Yeah,
I don't
you
know
should
why it's
remove
doing
the window
that.
You should either remove the window capture or set it up to capture a different window, because I think it's, you know what is going on. I think it's capturing the OBS window, so it doesn't capture itself, because it would be, you know.
Yeah, it's a little pointless. Okay. Well, I have a bingo sheet up here. I'm just going to add more images. We'll just add some images. Some stuff to look at.
You should probably set up to broadcast in better resolution than 480p, because it's the current year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should. Okay, I'll set it to current year status so that we can see. I have bingo sheets. I'm really proud of that I found the bingo sheets. What did I grab in here? I probably shouldn't just open an image without seeing what exactly it is. Here's something from Pexels. This is gonna be wholesome. Oh, look at that. Wholesome. It's a castle. That was when I made a video about Mott and Bailey. So I just found pictures of castles.
Oh, so you are trying to be like share diversity or something?
There we go. There we go. How does that? This looks beautiful. And then this, I want
But did you talk about machicolations?
Why doesn't this come to the front? Why do I have the hardest life?
So what do you mean doesn't come to the front? Well, they are appearing in the order you set them up in the scene, so you can rearrange them.
Well, there we go. So we have a chat. We have a chat up on the screen, and I have a castle over here, and I have a bingo sheet. All right. I think that means we're ready. I think this is good. Sorry. Okay. I think let's just do what the stream was for. Because it's probably a bigger learning curve than I could make it be good.
And you were trying to put the Hangouts app.
Yeah, I was trying to do the Hangouts app, and it kept giving me this weird redirect error, and I tried everything, and I've never had that before, and it's just like every week there's some new, just stupid thing. So,
Google, what do you expect?
I don't know. Yeah, it's the man. It's just the man. I try to change the setting of 144 pp. I don't know where that is though.
Well, it's in the OBS setup. Just I guess I've never broadcast using OBS. I use OBS as my virtual camera. Let me actually see here. OBS.
Is this advanced? It sounds so advanced. I probably shouldn't be scrolling through this like OBS settings while I'm live on air. Anyway, well, I'm glad a couple of people have showed up and have endured this little kerfuffle. But yeah, so today I have a couple of chapters, and this will bring us to about the halfway point in this book, which is great because that means within a month I was able to get through half of it, which means that I am well on my way to my goal of reading this entire stupid, awful, terrible book, reading the entire thing, so it's available on my channel, before I return to the Twin Cities Men's Center and give them their book back and apologize for stealing it for so long. But, you know, I didn't want to give it back until after I had, like, responded to every page of it, but it's a very, very awful, infuriating book. Yeah, so I did steal this idea of making a bingo card from Honey Badger Radio. But you'll notice that mine is a little different, because these are the 1992 feminists, right? So it's just a little bit... Oh, fuck this castle. Let's make this bigger. Really, this should just be the whole screen. So we have deconstructing masculinity, right? That's a very classic trope. That's still a trope today, but I think that feminists nowadays have backed off of that just a little bit, just because of optics. We have the divine feminine. This, I think this is a prevailing theme within feminism. It's typically not named as such. Warrior is scary. They often really don't like the image of the warrior. They really, really do not like that. And it comes from the king, warrior, magician, lover, those 4 archetypes of masculinity, which was popular in like the OG men's movement. Emotional labor, that's a mainstay. That one also, I think, used to be bigger, but I don't know. I guess we had Jessica Valenti freaking out over like wrapping Christmas presents. That was kind of like the most recent mentioning of that I can think of. But it used to be like a major issue among like second waivers where they would complain about like unpaid labor and things like that. Toxic masculinity, self-explanatory. Women have it worse. That's basically the free space. Rape is also basically the free space. Man up is also basically the free space. They're basically all free spaces. Like I was reading through a couple of paragraphs of this one we're gonna go into, and I think we bingo within like a few sentences. So we can be very discerning. We can be very picky and very charitable in choosing whether or not excerpts apply to this thing. Violence against women, that's a free space. Just express yourself. Hierarchy bad. They're basically a bunch of commies. They hate hierarchies. Dualism bad. They hate dualism. They hate essentialism. It's a much bigger theme among the eco-feminists. And then but we're helping, of course. They think that they're helping. In this passage in particular, we're going to hear a lot about what feminists think the men's movement should be all about, which you can kind of predict. Gender pay gap, that won't die. But homophobia, that always comes up. So
wait, sorry, you said it's about what feminists think the men's movement should be about. It's just this sort of thing comes up a lot. Like you see these randos on social media responding to, I don't know, a politically incorrect statement of one sort or another made by a person who's associated with the MRM, and they'll say something like, there are legitimate men's issues, but they aren't going to be taken seriously if you talk about things like this, or if you're anti-feminist or something like that. So it's like they're almost trying to claim ownership of it themselves. And it's this like, well, we're sort of thinking about taking men's issues seriously, maybe, possibly. We haven't had like a committee meeting on this yet. We'll see. But if it does happen, don't you ever think for 1 second that this is going to be on your terms. And don't think for 1 fucking second that you're going to say things that make us, I don't know, feel uncomfortable or engender some scintilla of self-reflection. Because that's just, that's too far.
No, yeah, because the whole idea of like, oh, what you're doing is ineffective, that's a standard that's perfectly reasonable to apply to the MRM, but, how dare you suggest that, whatever feminists are doing, assuming they're doing anything, if we're going to be that charitable and assume they're even doing anything, how dare you suggest that what they're doing isn't helping, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a very terrible host. I didn't introduce the friends we have on the stream. We have Privilegier Shitlord, or just Glebs. And we have Ashley Messenger. So we have 2 people here. And if you guys want to like say hi, and if you want to like briefly introduce yourself or say something.
Well, I don't know what to say, and since you've not put the Hangouts app on the screen, so nobody can see my glorious shitposting fake news network setup as well.
Oh, sorry. Is it going to show the... I mean, I guess it's not the end of the world if it shows the link. I just assume people aren't going to, like, drop in randomly. If they do, that'll just be funny, honestly. I don't know. What's it showing
now? Now it is there, but it's... there are 2 pictures on top of them. So.
Wait. How do I...
Oh.
This I can figure out. This I can figure out quickly enough without derailing us too long. Okay, so I'm gonna do a window capture, and then I click add source, and then how do I choose which window it is? I don't.
Well, there when you add the new window capture, it shows you all the windows and select which one you need. But
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah,
So I
but you
do
minimize. It doesn't
Hangouts.
show minimized windows, so it should be like in the background, but not minimized, or else it won't
Oh, I
show up.
see. So I do it like that, and maybe that'll work. It's black though.
Well, it's funny that it worked in desktop capture, but are you sure they chose the right window? Because
Maybe I chose the wrong one. I don't think I. Wait. What did I do? What's going on? Okay, if I click delete, I should want to remove. Yes, I want to remove that window capture. Okay, mulligan. This is sort of like a really really awful OBS tutorial. It's like capture cursor. How about no? We don't need my cursor. Multi-adapter compatibility. That sounds complicated. Definitely not. This one. Yeah, it's like all black here, so I don't quite understand.
It would be fun if you got shouted out by PewDiePie or something, and you were having these technical difficulties with, I don't know, an 80,000 subscriber jump taken
Yeah,
from
well,
it.
that's the thing. Is typically people that have that kind of a following have already kind of figured this shit out. That's the charm of the small channel. If I dare call it that.
Yeah, it has. It gives YouTube a more sort of communitarian feeling. I think you talked about this in a video. When you follow mostly smaller channels, it's nice.
Yeah, it is fun because like if you have someone that gets like a whole like bunch of people, they can't possibly engage with everybody. Whereas like if you're small, it's like if someone comments or subscribes or whatever, like you see it, like you notice it. That's kind of and especially if you're doing like I don't know why it's just not showing up. I don't know. I don't. Does these things change it? Hangouts video call. Yeah, because it just shows black. I don't know why. But if I go to the Hangouts video call, I have it maximized, so I don't know. I'm getting real sloppy with the Hangouts link showing. I guess the other way would be like if I had an image, I could like put over it to censor the Hangout link, but I don't.
well, you can set up the cropping, so it shows not the whole window, but crops the the top or the bottom. It's right click on the source and
Oh
select
yeah,
filter.
and then I could do like, well that's for scaling, but I can crop. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's just showing a black window. Is that maybe just because I have it like selected? It's just black for some reason. I don't know why. But if I have it like this, then it shows us, right?
Well, it's kind of shows. Oh yeah, well, when it's the full desktops.
Yeah, if it's on the desktop.
It's weird. Oh yeah.
Oh, and if I move it like this, does that change the... Oh, that puts this on top! Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm just going to put it out like this, and the Hangouts link is showing, and I'm just going to assume nobody will abuse that, because fuck it.
Oh.
Alright, because now I can see everything important. I can see the people, and I can see the live chat. And I did post a link in there, so if you want to choose your own bingo card, there's like 30 of them. So, anyway.
Sorry,
also, in my Discord, I posted all of the images of the first section here, too. Sorry, what was that?
Where's the link to the bingo cards?
It's in the chat. Is
Okay.
are the chats separate if it's Streamlabs versus YouTube? No, this is
Yeah.
YouTube's.
Yeah, because the chat for the Hangout and the chat for the YouTube is separate, but it actually was even weirder because when you use like Hangouts on Air, there was also the third chat that was specific for Hangouts but separate. I know it's fucking Google. What do you expect? They're the way they do things is like the least intuitive, the least logical, the least comprehensible way ever.
Yeah,
Like, for
right. So
example,
I'm not just an idiot. I'm only it doesn't help that it's me trying to figure it out, but
it's like
no,
when
that's
I
why I
figure
got
out.
their little survey open. I'm gonna let them know. I'm gonna let them know. Hey, hey, I got things to say, and you're making it hard. Okay, yeah. So it looks like I hate that it switches my theme to like the white one. I usually have the black one on, but anyway.
Yeah, because the admin section is only white only. It's like for the the section racists for the client area it can be white or black, but the admin area is like only white, like whites only. What is it, South Africa or something?
Yeah, and my phone did that thing where it uploads some of the pictures like sideways, which is whatever. So I can try to. Okay, how do I rotate this? I use Paint. Yeah, this Margo Adair chick, I could not find like any information about her. So she
It's
is
it's
certified
not
like
written.
obscure.
It's not written in black like the last one was it?
What do you mean?
Uh, the weird.
Oh, Hattie Gossett.
Yeah.
No, this is written in good old plain, just bitch talk. It's
Cool.
not that's not totally ebonics. Yeah, man, Hattie Gossett. I don't really know. She's kind of an enigma to me. It's just weird to me that so many people are like, "Oh my god, it really speaks to me." Blah blah. I'm just like, how does this speak to you? How does this even make any sense to you? So, yeah. Terrence is not going, from her rape poems. Her poems about rape. That's the kind of thing I have on my channel. I want to become a rape poet, just like my hero Hattie Gossett.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
That's right. I want to have a Wikipedia page where I am a rape poet. All right, I'm just gonna start reading it. So this first one it's 10 pages, and I'll try to read a little bit briskly. Yeah. So it's Will the Real Men's Movement Please Stand Up by Margo Adair. The Real Man's Revival, Under the Tent and Wild in the Woods. Opposition to domination is at the heart of feminism. If Robert Bly's Iron John represents the philosophy of the men's movement, anyone committed to social and ecological justice has reason to be extremely apprehensive. Iron John is steeped in hierarchical militaristic thinking. As an eco-feminist, I agree with Bly that industrialism, with its alienation from nature, is at the root of much contemporary malaise. To welcome a return of the kings, queens, knights, and princesses of the Middle Ages hardly evokes images of egalitarian relationships. Movement, by definition, is the ushering in of social change. This men's movement is not about social change. It is a backlash. Men clamoring to reestablish the moral authority of the patriarchs. There's our introduction. Sorry, the last line got clipped off there, but
Is patriarchy in your bingo cards?
oh shoot, yeah, I guess that would have been kind of obvious, huh? I did not
Well,
include
yeah,
patriarchy. Wow. Wow. Well,
yeah.
I can think of a few more, then we can have a proper 5x5 sheet.
It's not really, yeah, point taken. It's not really specific to this era of feminism. It's just, yeah.
Well, that's the thing though. You look at things like that and you're like, "Oh, that'll be just another free space." But like they're all free spaces. That's how predictable these people are. Okay. What I thought was interesting though is like it's not about social change, but like isn't it? Like even if you accept this idea that it's totally reactionary, right? Is that not social change still?
Well,
Like I just think it's bizarre the way she's using those words.
if you look at the kinds of things that typically motivate people to care about men's issues, men usually only care about it if they've been affected by the issues directly. You know, they went through a troublesome divorce or whatever it might be. And women usually only care about it when it affects them by genetic proxy, which is to say, when they have sons. So those are the only things that get people to care about it, and that clearly isn't true of women's issues. So, yeah, it's pretty difficult to argue that this is just that this isn't a recent phenomenon, especially considering the history of this. Over 100 years, E. Belfort backs these kinds of people with no real progress so far, sadly.
No, that's exactly it too, and that's why I think with the men's movement, it's very, very like atomized, right? Like you'll have people who are into like one particular issue. So one thing I always try to do is I try to make it about all of the issues, and the easiest way to do that is to make it about the empathy gap, which is a great way to make friends. But okay. These ones upload in the wrong order. All right, so I don't know how well these come up on the stream, especially if it's not in a very high resolution. But if anybody hops into the Discord server, then I have the images all saved in there. In a separate category, I made some separate categories this week. Getting organized. Okay. But yeah, from that, I guess you have like domination and hierarchy bad with all of this talking about egalitarianism, but I'm sure she'll be circling back to a lot of this too. But now we're gonna get into the really the really infuriating part. The stand of the real men's movement is pro-feminist, gay affirmative, and enhancing to men's lives. These are the unifying principles of the National Organization of Men Against Sexism, NOMAS. This organization has been holding annual men and masculinity conferences since 1975. It is alarming that the men's movement that gets mass media attention is what the men in NOMAS call the Mythopoetic movement. The media now depicts this movement, with Robert Bly as its most well-known proponent, as the sum total of the men's movement. This amounts to making invisible what I call the real men's movement. Real because this movement threatens the status quo, whereas the Mythopoetic movement maintains it. The Mythopoetic movement is severely deficient in upholding NOMAS's first two principles. While the real movement dismantles the ideology of the real man, the mythopoets are busy resurrecting it. This ideology teaches boys not to cry, express pain, or, for that matter, acknowledge any other difficulty, for these are all signs of weakness. At all times, be tough, be strong, fight, grin and bear it, at all costs, stay on top of it. The ideology of the real man is an indispensable mentality to implant into agents of social control. To maintain hierarchy takes constant vigilance. Domination depends on an ideology of the protective, benevolent warriors on one side and rapists on the other. We live in a world whose social order is kept in place by the notion that men are naturally aggressive and territorial. Men are predators, while women are naturally passive, reserved and vulnerable, open prey for male aggression. Therefore, might must protect the helpless from the rapists.
You know, the way she began to describe it, it sounded more like she was talking about, not men, but the Mythopoetic movement is like the Sith Order. Yeah. The Force is not a shield to defend the feeble, but a weapon to empower the strong, or something. Or kind of also like, the Tal'Darim from StarCraft 2. Which were kind of like discount Sith anyways.
Yeah, it's just like... So here's the thing. This whole idea of not expressing emotions, I think what she's getting it from with Robert Bly is... What he points out is that typically... the only people that males will express emotion towards are females. They typically won't express emotions toward other males, right? So then what ends up happening is they view all emotional expression as being female. Like I was just listening to like a talk he had given like in preparation for this, and she's totally wrong. Like he's actually very outspoken about men having an outlet to express themselves and in being able to express it among other males so that they don't internalize it as a uniquely female thing. So I don't know, she doesn't have like any real citation here. There's some citations in the back of this section, but it's hard to know exactly where she's getting this besides just like a stereotype. I also think that like this is really crazy. So you have this the National Organization of Men Against Sexism. So she describes it as pro-feminist, gay affirmative, and enhancing to men's lives, and then identifies those as the unifying principles of that movement. Right? Like just imagine that's her view of the men's movement. It is to, first of all, principally, it must be pro-feminist. And then the second most important thing, it must be gay affirmative. And then the third thing is, yeah, and they can enhance men's lives. Whatever the fuck that means, right? You know? Hi, Mitch. Hi in the chat. Mitch, if you want, I can send you the link. I guess I kind of sent everyone the link because I'm sloppy and it's like just hanging out on the screen. But we're all cool and no one's abusing it. But this is the theme you're gonna see is like feminists, they really dig their own grave when you just let them sit back and just describe what they think the men's movement should be. It's very damning. Even just the name of it, the National Organization of Men Against Sexism. You know, this is how men should address their issues. They have to be employed. And basically all she's doing in this entire section is she's just saying like, how come the parts of the men's movement that I like, how come the feminist men's movement, how come they're not stepping up to the plate? How come they're not manning up to take down these sexist men who like to go drum in the woods? Like
Well, the thing about the issues themselves, men's issues being sort of a tertiary concern, which I think you just alluded to, in these kinds of conversations, is that, you know, you even see that sometimes within the MRM, just out of desperation, I guess you could call it. You see people saying things like, well, we can't really market this just as a men's issue, even though it glaringly is. It's an overwhelmingly male issue. But we know that isn't really saleable to people. So how can we make it look less gender asymmetric than it is so that this will be more appealing?
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme that if you package it as just like a general like a really great example of that is parental alienation. Anytime like I'll see a thread like on Facebook of people talking about I gotta keep my tap on the boomers, right? To see what's going on. Whenever there's a topic about parental alienation, there's always at least one woman who's like, well, I'm an alienated mother, right? And it affects us too, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, go fuck yourself. Like, I mean, yeah, I get it. Like, I don't doubt that happens, but, you know, always in there to remind us, you know, there's women affected too, by the way. This is not gendered. It's like, okay, sure. Nomas Boy got me too'd. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm not sure if there's actually like a case of that, or if that's just like a reference to like she's me tooing him in a roundabout way in this passage here. All right, let's keep on trudging on. Controlling or harmonizing, one kills, the other heals. I also agree with Bly that it is vital to remove the split between spirit and matter. It is essential to reclaim a sense of the sacred and to restore a healthy spiritual life that includes communion with nature and rites of passage. I am sure that men performing rituals in the woods soothe the alienation caused by the sterility of modern-day life, but to connect with nature from the lookout of the warrior and the wild man only perpetrates domination. And when she says wild man, she's referring to the story of Iron John. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all.
Nope.
So, I actually forget that proper origin of it, but it's something that Robert Bly kind of took and like repackaged into his own like poems in his own book. But the basic story is there was like this wild man in the woods that they like found, and like they put him in a cage, and then there's a little boy playing with the ball, and he wants his ball back. The ball rolls into the wild man's cage, and the wild man says, "I'll give you the ball back if you let me out." And at first the boy doesn't let him out, and then eventually he goes and gets the key and lets him out, and the key is hidden under his mother's pillow. And then after he does this, he realizes, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. So he decides to go with the wild man out into the woods. And that's a very, very extremely just like quick and sloppy rendition of it. But it's all very, very heavily symbolic. Is this idea that like the golden ball represents kind of like this complete and innocent, like childlike nature, where there's not a division between like masculine and feminine. It's sort of like a sort of an innocence. And then in order for the boy to get that back, he has to kind of accept this character of the wild man. And the wild man in some ways also represents like male like teachers, or male like prophets, or male like priests. Like this sort of like having some sort of a mentor, right? That's not someone in your family, is what that represents. And a lot of what Robert Bly talks about is basically that there's really a lack of this in society, and that it's reflecting on people's psyche. So yeah, anyway, that's something that's actually really, really interesting to look into, especially if you like any like the Jungian psychology, or even Freud. There's a lot of that in there too. It's kind of an interesting little parable. So anyway, so that's the wild man that she's referring to. And of course, feminists don't like that notion. They really don't like the idea of a wild man. The concept of wild emerges out of the assumption that nature needs to be controlled. Otherwise, she will get out of hand. See, it's a wild man, right? So of course we're talking about women. People who have not been civilized don't live under or over nature. We live with nature. Indigenous people don't think of nature as wild. In fact, having survived 500 years of genocide that was justified by the belief that they were wild savages, many Native Americans take offense at the term. I don't imagine the Indians feel imperialist mentality will be transformed because white men have taken to drumming in the woods. Instead, they are likely to feel one more aspect of their way of life is being stolen. Without the paradigm of control, wild would have no meaning. I don't know. I think it's an interesting argument. I'll give her that.
Well, it sort of sounds like it's getting at something vaguely real, because men do have this capacity for cooperation, for instance, which, well, maybe that's not quite the word actually, but a lot of people have noted this. Women really haven't evolved to cooperate with other groups in groups of other strange women to control the environment or to procure resources from it in the way that men have. But I guess she's saying that this isn't an evolved function, but it's a construct of modern society. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's even simpler than that. I think it's just she's assuming that wild means bad and means it must be controlled, which I don't think that's even necessarily the case. Like I think that wild.
Well, nature is pretty crazy, man. Like
nature is crazy. Like nature is wild. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like just the term nature, it's almost not useful. It's almost not a useful term. I just, to me, it's always seemed so arbitrary that we consider things that they're created by mankind to not be part of nature.
Right.
I don't know. But, I mean, it's also weird, too, where she seems to be suggesting... Like she doesn't like the connotations behind wild. but it's like she'd rather just erase the term than kind of rethink that concept and say, well, maybe wild isn't always bad. You know, like because to me it seems like there's more than one option here. But she hates the term wild, like wild savages. Like sure, savage I accept. You know, has a much more negative connotation than wild. But
Well, there is no such thing as domesticated savages, so yeah, savages are wild.
yeah, it's kind of redundant, right? And then she has this little argument. They really have to like the way that they really shit on the mythopoetic movement. It really disgusts me, and it really demonstrates that they aren't really interested in finding solutions because it's constantly making fun of men for like yeah, it's weird. Like you know, it's weird to go do your little drum circle thing, and like they're kind of being emotional and making themselves vulnerable in this way. And of course, you know, these feminist women are coming out there to basically mock them and ridicule them. And we have another one of these Nicole Hollander comics we can look at after we finish this section that you know shows more of it, but you know, they have to find some way to not just say it's silly and ridiculous, but they also want to find ways to package it as harmful. And it's always like a very convoluted argument. Like just this idea that like, oh, Native Americans are going to feel like you're appropriating their culture because you went drumming in the woods. It's like, no. Like
I think they have bigger problems to contend with, like what's it, alcoholism and all that.
yeah, right? I mean, yeah. It's really the thing behind a microaggression is what you're always really saying is that you don't have any bigger problems. And that's the thing too is it's kind of like a no-win situation because they're not doing it in a way to be like let's mock this culture. They're saying there's something here, there's something spiritual, there's something that we like about it, and that's why we want to do it. You know, like imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So it seems to me like it's really you know offense is taken not given. And of course this is a presumably white feminist just getting offended on the natives' behalf. So that's a timeless element here.
Yeah.
Glebs, do you have something to say, or was that just?
No, no, it's not much to say. It's like you know they usually complain about people using the bad words because that's problematic. It's like yeah, it's funny. That's I think it's a residual mythological thinking that you know words have power. Well, the words have only the power you give them because you know no word has an intrinsic meaning. You know, it's just a sequence of sounds you make with your mouth. So you know, but if you replace one word with another, well, sure, it doesn't have the same connotations yet. But if you replace it and use it instead of another, it will acquire every single connotation that the previous word had. It's like you know how you know, retarded is a bad word. You should call them special. So now you can call someone special to mock their intellectual abilities. Oh, you're very special, David Sherratt. And it's special became the new retarded.
Yeah, and now it's exceptional individual, right? Like it's very exceptional, we can say. And yeah, that's exactly it. Is if you have meaning surrounding a term, and there's this idea that the term creates the meaning when really it's the other way around. And I guess it kind of mirrors this whole idea that like advertising like really defines what people want rather than you know companies figuring out what people want and then playing to those desires. I think
Well,
that very
yeah,
often they reverse that dynamic and they're doing it with
yeah,
language here.
and the evidence for, I guess, the standard view on that is just not there. The evidence suggests that advertising doesn't really change people's preferences all that much, to the extent that it tries to. Most of the time, it doesn't even try to. It just tries to cater to a preference that's already there.
Yeah, and that's why like you know when people have their criticisms of like consumerism and things like that, like yeah, I think that's perfectly valid to criticize it as like superficial, but you know, it's not being done to us. It's reflecting
But yeah,
this nature of society.
human beings are superficial. The problem I have with consumerism is that people dislike the way that it's a signaling mechanism, spending money on things that have no real utility at great personal cost and all this to send the right sexual signals or to attract mates or whatever it might be, the signals they're trying to give off. But people have always done that. We just have more stuff to buy now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, like personally, like that's not my jam, right? But like I've never felt like, oh, that person has really fancy things and this hurts me. Like,
Yeah, but there is something to be said for minimalism, just trying to minimize waste. I think there's an argument to be made for that. But you don't need to bring in the whole signaling component for that to make sense. Just don't waste money.
no, exactly. All right, let's see what else Ms. Adair has for us. Considering nature as wild and needing continual domestication, a euphemism for exploitation, I have to stop there. Like, no, no. I hate the way that these commies always try to like create exploitation out of literally everything. Like, ugh. Okay, sorry. So considering nature as wild and needing continual domestication, a euphemism for exploitation, has brought life as we know it to the brink of destruction. For the first time in history, the future of life itself is in question. It is predicted that 1/5 of all species on the planet will be extinct within the next 8 years.
Predicted by whom? Seriously, it is when they say it is predicted. Well, you know, it can say, "Well, who predicted? Oh, some crazy bum or high on PCP on the street corner." Well, it's true that it was predicted by a fucking idiot, but it doesn't make it true. This is, by the way, this is sorry for the unrelated rant, but this is my problem with those, climate activists, aka alarmists. They have done more to damage the movement for combating climate change than any climate denialists or all climate denialists altogether. Because when you listen to those fucking alarmists, like what's the name of this U.S. politician he ran for president at one point? I'm having a brain fart. Gore, yeah.
Oh yeah.
This guy, he doesn't know jack shit. Just opens his mouth and shit pours out. He has like an asshole for a mouth, and you listen to him, listen to his old predictions. None of them came true. Why? Because he's not a scientist. He's just someone who makes money off retarded leftists who have a bleeding heart and empty skull. And you compare. He said that there will be no all the ice on the mountaintops will melt, and the ice is still there. And and people who don't believe in climate change, they will point out, oh yeah, look at this retard. He said this stuff, and this never happened. And other people who are on the fence, they will guess which side of the fence they will be more likely to land on. And that's with those people who don't know jack shit, but they say, oh yeah, the Earth is dying. Stop denying. Well, it doesn't look dying to me. I don't know where they got their ideas.
Who even cares? It's just a bunch of animals running around eating each other anyway. It's not very pretty.
It's like species die off naturally all the time. The biggest extinction events were like, what was the biggest one? Was it? There were so many extinction events, and at one point, I think the biggest one was when the concentration of oxygen became so high that it started killing off. Because the first living organisms were anaerobic, so they didn't breathe.
I think the biggest one was the Permian extinction 230 million years ago. Something like, I think it was 70-something% of land species and 95% of sea species died off. So yeah, we've seen a lot more.
That's heresy. That's heresy because we live in a universe that is 6,000 years old, and it was just created with the appearance of that having had happened.
No, I thought you were going to say we live in a society.
That was why they went extinct, I think, right? They had a society, and it caused all of these apocalypses. But no, there's a similar prediction that's out there right now about like that like there's going to be catastrophic climate change within like 11 years or something, and I'm like, I'm going to set a countdown timer. Like, let's see how this ages. Like, it'll be a decade later, you're gonna have forgotten about it, and I'm gonna be like the most annoying person. But I think that's the problem. Like, when you have a prediction, everybody forgets like bad predictions that don't come true, but like it's only predictions that like were really, really good and like really prescient. Those are the ones you remember.
It's like chronic gambler. If you know someone who is chronically addicted to gambling, these people remember every time they won, especially if they won big. But their memories are very hazy on when they lost money. So if they start recalling how their gambling was, well, they will think that it's pretty decent. They kind of lost sometimes, but when they win big. And but if they kept their record and calculated how much they lost and won, yes, things would be different.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it's feng shuiing the memories in your head, right? And what are the ones you want to sweep under the bed? You know, the memories of you losing. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Human memories are very unreliable. That's why if you want to remember something, just keep a record or film it. You take pictures.
And I think
go ahead.
There's this economist Robin Hanson made this point that there are a lot of smart people who will just say that there's no possible way to predict the future, or that there isn't any way to do it intelligently or accurately, even though there are, to some degree anyway, there are some things you can do. But there's no real status in predicting the future because of all of the historical examples of it going wrong. And yeah, there's not much. You're a lot more likely to look like an idiot, so people just don't bother trying. Also, when you were talking about Al Gore, Glebs, before you said politician, initially I thought you were going to start talking about Bill Nye or someone like that.
Oh, Bill Nye.
Yeah,
Bill Nye defines the Nye.
Yeah, the way people talk about him, you would certainly think he was somebody important or interesting, even though he's not.
I have something to say about him because he's a fucking heck fraud. For example, do you know that he calls, at least used to call, he still calls himself a scientist, and in his CV from 2014, he calls himself a PhD, even though his real degree, like the highest degree he got, is bachelor in mechanical engineering, and all the PhDs he has are honorary, which is not real. Those are like awards. When you see what the honorary degree is, it's like something you are awarded. You don't need to study for it. You don't need to pass exams. You can be awarded by the university just out of the blue. And those are not supposed to be.
Sorry, the most hilarious instance of that I've ever heard was somebody who was given an honorary PhD in theology. So it's like a not real PhD in a not real academic subject of just sophistry and bullshit.
But if you think about it, doesn't make that the only real one though, right? Like that's the real way to do it. That's the only way to get that theology PhD with any integrity is to have it be honorary. And it has to be like from like not a person, but like from God. Like the sky has to part, and you have to know by faith that you have it. You know, I think I'm feeling one coming on right now. I think I just got one. I think I might have gotten one.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
This is how cults are created.
There we go.
It's arguably how Christianity was created. Constantine's conversion or whatever. Arguably, it's possible that he was making a bit of a political maneuver or something. But yeah, it's debatable whether Christianity ever would have became what it was without the figure of Constantine and his conversion. So yeah.
I like the idea of Christianity starting off as a political maneuver because then it's basically secular Coranism 1.0.
Right.
Whenever for religion to spread, it has to be like spread by political means, because especially back in the day. Well, nowadays it could theoretically you spread through internet, but back then it had to be it had to use some government entity or something to spread as a vector. It's like when it's like an empire and the ruler decided write a decree that everyone has to obey by this new religion instead of like stop believing your old bullshit. Here's new bullshit to believe. Well, it's the law.
I've just
That's
decided that every single person who either presents at or attends the virtual conference, part of the RSVP is you are going to receive an honorary doctorate, and you have to tell me what it's going to be in. I'm going to have an online conference of real internet academics, and that's exactly what it's going to be. And everybody can get a degree. Bam.
You should start your own online university, as Jordan Peterson is attempting to do. Or I should say, as he's been saying he's going to do for about 3 years.
Hasn't he? Then he's been saying he's going to make an alternative to Patreon, and then saying he's going to do like
I thought that was Dave Rubin.
No, it was him and Dave Rubin. They were going to work
Right.
together, I think. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that it's a fairly complicated thing. So I'm sure that he's not just blowing people off. Like, I think that he's probably like tried, and then like he's run into a couple of hiccups or something. I don't know. All right, let's get a little bit for. I'm thinking maybe for each of these streams, I should just read one, because I find that with the last ones, it felt like maybe I was trying to rush through and get a whole bunch of things in there. But let me see.
Yeah, it's nicer. It's kind of nicer when you can just pick it apart sentence by sentence. Well, as long as the sentences are interesting.
Right. Because let's see, because there's. I'm just going to count really quick, because there's this one, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so after this one, there's 12. 12 divided by... So if I did it at that rate, I probably wouldn't finish in time. But a lot of these other ones are kind of shorter, so I think that should be okay. And maybe we can just speed up if it's looking like it's going to be difficult towards the end. Or maybe just do like more than one in a week or something. So
How many things have you crossed off your bingo card at this moment, if anything? Just curious.
I haven't been keeping track of the bingo card, but if we revisit the bingo sheet, I'm sure you got, let's see.
Warrior.
Well, she did mention men as rapists, so I think that's a fair one. She mentioned egalitarianism and returning to the patriarchy. I think that counts as hierarchy bad. I don't know if we necessarily have dualism bad, but we're really, really kind of on the cusp of that. She's kind of beating around the bush of that. Man up is, I think, a prevailing theme of this. If we haven't seen enough of that yet, we're definitely going to be seeing more of that one.
Yeah, when you say dualism, that's not like Cartesian dualism, is it? Sorry, I'm not familiar with all this.
Well, here's the thing. In theory, yes. Because dualism, it's like a feminist philosophy F word. Because
Right.
basically the way that they see reality is that everything is it's that everything is like based on that. They see that as like the underpinning of most of philosophy, and they see it as like a male sort of way of thinking predominantly, and they see it as having basically like dominated the way that we look at just about everything. So
is it like a body-mind dualism, like in Plato's philosophy, or?
Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, basically they think that everything has been seen that way, and that you need to deconstruct it in order to have like this real, true feminine epistemology. So,
Well, it is kind of like Cartesian dualism then.
So they're characterizing it as masculine? Interesting.
yeah, it's this idea that you create because in a dualistic thing, there's also an implication that one is superior to the other.
Well, if they are saying that there's a feminine and masculine way of thinking, then they are engaging in dualism, because that's kind of...
No, yeah, and it's a classic criticism of ecofeminists, right? Where they say, well, it sounds like you're creating these dichotomies of man versus nature and male versus female, right? And then particularly like people who are more like non-binary, right? They're the ones who get really kind of upset by this because it starts to get a little bit turfy. So yeah, the ecofeminists I think are my favorite among the feminists because you can tell they're kind of making an effort to string together something that's supposed to be coherent, but it just falls apart in really like convoluted and kind of silly ways. So they got a lot of flavor.
It's like observing feminists trying to come up with a coherent epistemology is like looking at a turtle trying to fuck a stone. You know that this is pointless and effort. There's no way it would be fruitful. But they're trying. They're really trying.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Bloody Bush Dimension asked about the bingo sheet. So, if you scroll up, I have the link. So if you want to open it in your own tab, you can actually scroll through and choose your own random one. I can put mine back on the screen. The only issue is that like I'm really boomering it up right now, and like I have all of my like Windows text. So you can see whenever I like switch tabs for anything, I have to like restack everything. So that's why it looks the way it is. But yeah, I'll grab the bingo card when I'm saving the next image when we get off of this page. I'll make sure I grab that one. I might cover up faces for it or something because I want to make sure the chat's showing. Okay, let's see, where were we? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, we got derailed halfway through this paragraph because of this ridiculous claim about 1/5 of all species on the planet being extinct.
I'm kind of surprised. Sorry, go on.
Oh, you go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm kind of surprised rape hasn't come up yet. You'd think that would be like the first thing with feminists.
Yeah, well, she mentioned men as rapists, so she kind of alluded to it. So we did have the word at least, but we don't have the hard hitting. How come you haven't stopped rape yet? Sort of thing. Okay. So yeah, so she predicted that 1/5 of all species on the planet will be extinct within the next 8 years, which at the time of this being published, that would have been by the year 2000. The web of life is not too far from collapse when 20% of its connecting points are broken. It is about time we realize that our efforts to live about nature are killing us too. Living with nature on the only... Wait, what? Because that our efforts to live... Oh, I'm sorry. Above nature are killing us too. Living with nature is the only path. Living harmoniously with nature while conceptualizing nature as wild is an impossibility. Wild evokes images of wreaking havoc, oblivious to being embedded in a webwork of ecological and social relations. The image of thousands of men taking guidance from their inner wild man is frightening. I'm just imagining like there's a wildfire and she shows up just to like nag at it. Because she doesn't want to. Because if you put it out with water, you're dominating it, right? That's domination and control. You need to pray at it, right? You need to. God, it's just like all these ecofeminist women. It's like the epitome of the image of them is just like a white chick who wants to talk about healing. Which is like stop, like it's like stay away. It never ends well. It's never really about healing. They might think it is, but to heal ourselves and secure the future, it is crucial to remove the schisms between civilization and nature. When we cut ourselves, we do not have to tell our skin cells how to mend. Healing does not take an act of will. Intrinsic to life is the process of returning to equilibrium whenever it gets disrupted. Sorry, what?
I would say if you have a broken bone, usually you'll have, if it's very severe, you have to go to a doctor so they will graft or like insert a piece of steel there or like titanium. Or if you have an infection, you have to buy pills and with antibiotics or something. Not everything can be healed naturally. Also,
No,
if you have a cut,
Well, I'm sure she's very consistent on that. She's never taken antibiotics. She's never had a vaccination, never been to a doctor, and I'm sure she lives like an 18th century subsistence farmer or something.
Well, even those farmers, when they have a cut, they will just bandage. They would bandage themselves with a piece of cloth or something, because sometimes you have to assist your body with healing.
And how much cotton had to die for that cloth? My goodness. When any ecosystem gets out of balance, it recovers its balance naturally. That is, if human beings don't block the process. Literally, when you put a bandage on it, you're blocking a process to make it heal properly. Nature does not need management. When left alone, nature does not go wild. But instead, natural processes bring about ever-evolving states of equilibrium. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the next page here. I grab the next couple of them. Uh-oh. Okay, so where am I? I have 1, 2, 3. This is number 4.
The thing about equilibrium, I know it's kind of a nitpick, and I'm not a physicist, but isn't it like a law of thermodynamics that eventually everything just sort of loses energy and decays? Kind of hard to call that equilibrium, but I don't know. Should probably
it's another one of these concepts like nature that's a little bit arbitrary. I don't like it, right. And I'm really weary of it when people like they package their entire worldview around it, and it's kind of like you're kind of setting yourself up for something that's not gonna work. I just don't. I really don't think nature is a useful concept. That's my hot take. I don't think that nature is a useful concept. That's like one word I just like avoid using because it's not useful.
Right.
I'm just gonna save all of them right now. I should. Okay, so next time I think I'll save the images, and I think I can load them into the Discord thing beforehand. I've been really like irregular lately with sleeping and everything because I've been exercising. I've been playing lots of Dance Dance Revolution because I want to become waifu skinny and so good at the DDR. And I was able to complete Max 300 on Heavy in the arcade, which I've never done before. 15 years ago, I was able to complete Max 300 on Heavy at home on the soft pad one time when I was a baby. So I'm really proud of myself. I tried to do it again last night and I failed. So I got good days and bad days. But the next goal is to be able to do it and make it look easy, like how the Asians can. I don't know how they do it. Okay, so I have Hangout and then... Oh, I need to grab my images. Where are they? I think if I open the... I'm just going to open like all of these so I just have them all. Yeah, we're going to edit them. Actually, since I mentioned it, we can actually take a look at this comic from Nicole Hollander. I can make it bigger.
Who's Nicole Hollander?
She makes this crappy comic called Sylvia, and this is Sylvia.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, these are just periodically featured throughout the book. So at the end of this section we're reading, this is the next part they have. So it's her...
You need to enlarge... Well, first of all, install GIMP instead of MS Paint. Like, seriously.
I like MS Paint. It is simple. I love it.
I'm not against people being complete degenerates. Just don't advertise with degenerates.
Do you see these colors? Look at all of these colors. There's all the colors I ever need. More than I can name. Like, what's this? I don't know what that's called. Oh, it's lavender.
Well, what's this? Oh, wait.
But anyway, this comic is... I'm not entirely sure I get it. So she's, like, reading the newspaper, and it says, Manly Dreams. And there's like flowers everywhere. I guess that's supposed to be like.
By the way, there's a zoom function in MS Paint, like the looking glass.
Oh, there icon. We go. Don't you love how I'm like, yeah, I use it because it's so easy that I don't even like know where its fucking basic features are. Oh, look at these pixels. Delicious. Actually, I have another smartphone that takes better pictures. I should do that for next time. I'm gonna take notes. And then in the Manly Dreams, he's saying, I dreamt that I was out in the woods with a bunch of guys beating on drums and hugging trees, when suddenly I heard myself scream, I don't want to be a warrior. I want to be at a nice restaurant surrounded by pretty young women in big fur coats.
What the fuck?
And the magazine says guy stuff on here. I don't know what this is supposed to be. Is it like an empty bag of chips or something? I don't know what is this? What is this? It looks like a Pokemon.
Uh, it's like a pillow or
Maybe like a pillow or something. Yeah, I don't. It's
maybe
also like this is like an awkward way of having. Like, is he sitting up like this? It's like a really weirdly flat image. Like he's not. There's no dimension to it. It's like it's as though like his torso bends just below his shoulder. Like. Anyway.
This is a really shittily drawn comic, and
It's just garbage.
So wait, the first panel is like, is she writing a novel or something? And this is happening.
No, she's
in the
reading. See, she's just like, oh, maybe she. Oh, that's a typewriter. That is a typewriter.
So is she writing a story about a guy who is talking about his dream?
I guess so. I guess that's what it's supposed to be. I don't know the deep lore on Sylvia, except that she's kind of a smarmy bitch. That's all I got so far of the flavor.
So why is like if you wanted to talk about a guy who had a dream, why make him a part of a book? So it's not a guy's dream; it's an idea, some bitch's idea of what a guy's dream is. Like, what?
Well, you know, for all this talk about how bad male writers and film directors are because they don't understand the female experience, and you have, you know, the male gaze and all this, it's always funny when feminists attempt something like insight into male thinking or male minds, because they're really not good at it. Like, they don't have the theory of mind for it.
Well, I might disagree a little bit. Like, not in general, but in this particular case, I think that what she's described kind of is true of a lot of these, like the more blue pill men, right? Like, because and it kind of is the reason that the mythopoetic movement hasn't had as much success as it could have. Because if you think about it, like it doesn't appeal to most men. This idea that you go out into the woods with other men and like you know, beat on drums and do this sort of spiritual thing. Like it really is kind of a hard thing to sell. And I think a typical man is like, yeah, I just want to be in a nice restaurant, have lots of bitches around, right? Like it. I'm not saying that's like a fair, you know, but like, you know what I mean?
More so in modern society than in past societies. I don't know, though. Maybe you're right.
Well, if it was a real guy's dream, like, I don't think he would actually dream about women dressed in fur coats. I mean, come on, in a guy's dream, women are probably wearing much less.
Nothing.
Yeah, undressed and laying on the fur coats.
Unless someone has a fur coat fetish, because I'm sure there is such a fetish. Because if internet has taught me anything, is that people will jerk off to literally anything.
Yeah, fire hydrants and.
Yeah, I've been to DeviantArt. I've seen some stuff.
I will say I watched Kothism's video on how to fuck a dragon, and it was surprisingly reasonable. I can't take him away from that. I can't take that away from him. I can't take that away from him.
There's a website.
Never use fucking dragon and reasonable in the same sentence ever again.
Yeah, no, everybody was freaking out over his channel, and I decided I'm gonna go investigate. I'm gonna see what's going on, and no, I think that people are not being charitable. I think that he's surprisingly reasonable. You know, it's not my jam. He's definitely a weirdo, but I think he knows that. He wouldn't deny that.
There's a website somewhere on the internet that somebody told me about a few years ago. I wish I could remember what it was called, but they sell dragon dildos. Like, dildos that are...
Oh, yeah, and have you seen the dildos that are like aliens that lay eggs in you?
Yeah, it's like, I mean,
that's been going around for a while. It's you know, and I say, you know, if we're talking about dildos or whatever, like, that's fine. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Whatever your jam is. I'm gonna grab a random bingo sheet
accessories for furry degenerates. That's what it is.
Oh, if I were to just load these in the OBS thing, then it'll stay on there without me having to worry about like the layers. This is really obvious in hindsight. But see, since I know how to do this, bam, bam, bam. Oh, look how fast this is. Oh, wow, wow, wow.
Terrence in the chat says, Sylvia seems like low-key alt-right JQ propaganda. Oh yeah, I've noticed that the nose is, the nose knows in that picture.
Yeah, I was just gonna let that speak for itself.
But isn't that supposed to be Sylvia's herself insert or something?
I don't think that's Nicole Holland. I'm not sure who she based the character on. I'm not sure.
Nicole Holland, I should look
She's
up
she's
picture of her.
the artist, the writer and artist who gave us this.
Let me see what she looks like. If that's her, then that's kind of what I expected from a feminist.
Okay, so I got a
If
couple more
that's her,
pages.
because there's so many.
Oh, I already
I don't
have
know.
a bingo sheet up here. I just gotta raise it up. Bam! There we go. But then I want the display capture also. Wait, this goes lower. Oh, the window capture goes above the display capture. Yeah, right? Oh, but this one didn't work. I'm gonna delete this. Delete. Why can't I just delete it? Oh, remove. Man, fucking synonyms. And then I can remove this. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. Sydney in the chat says, Jeff Holiday has videos showcasing those. Oh, you mean like the weird dildos? Yeah, he would. He would. He's like the weirdest person. We don't need the castle. The castle is very silly.
The less said about him, the better.
Basically, right? I think if I just make this littler, then I can put the bingo sheet over here. Yeah, we are leveling up. We are learning things. And thank you all for coming with me on this journey. Is this going to be like way too small? I don't know.
By the way, my mic doesn't pick up too much background noise, does it?
No.
No, I think yours is fine. If anyone's the culprit on background noise, it's definitely me, because I was explaining to you earlier that like I get like if anybody uses water in this building, it just like it's just everywhere.
Can you drink? Can you drink straight from the taps there? Because I've heard
Yes.
that there are places. Yeah, there are places in the world, as I discovered when I was 10. I went to this southern European country, and I discovered that there are places where you can't just drink straight from the taps, and it absolutely horrified me.
Yeah, like Mexico is like that. That's the one everybody
Yeah.
mentioned. It was like, oh yeah, Mexico. Yeah, and honestly, I think the water here is pretty good. For a while, I was paranoid and I would like boil everything anyway. But then I stopped because it didn't matter.
Right, it's like that in non-Hong Kong China, right?
Yeah, in China, you don't want to drink out of the tap water. You'll get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I assumed when I came here, I was like, oh, I probably can't drink from the tap water because it's like China rules. And then I realized like this is not the opposite of China, but it's definitely not like China. If I say it's not China, then the Chinese government will come after me. So I'll just say it's not like China. So wait, so if I put this on the screen, I don't know what's showing right now. Oh, is it just the images of the thing? I think we should have the book images up so people can read along. Because that way if I mess it up, then people can at least still follow along.
Somebody said that he could imagine Jeff Holiday doing mythopoetic stuff.
And I said no.
Well, it does sound like him.
I don't think so. I think 0%. No, I don't see that. I could imagine him like doing drugs out in the woods, but I imagine he would not be down for the drumming and the poetry and the tree hugging and that kind of stuff. I just don't think so.
Well, he looks like a dirty hippie, so much that he will be put on the right-wing death squad lists just in case. Well, assuming scratch that, he has enough real reasons to be put on those lists. But if he didn't, he would still get there as a suspected dirty hippie, because tell you a secret.
Maybe
When the
maybe
time
it's
comes,
something
all
he needs.
of them must be exterminated for the future of humanity.
That would be really great if like he did go to like a warrior training and then like just came back like enlightened. That would be I would embrace that journey of his. That would be pretty
The only
entertaining.
enlightenment he can attain is the enlightenment of being purified by fire, because that's the only way to be sure.
No.
Degenerates like him belong in a furnace.
No. All right, we're going to get into the purpose of domination again. These are always good. The purpose. Oh, sorry, what?
Now it's going to BDSM. Oh, great.
No, yeah, they're really into
degeneracy.
it. If you want like a really quick insight into the way like all these feminists think, there's a book, Contract and Domination, and that was the book I was reading. I had to read it for like my philosophy seminar because I had an ecofeminist professor, and she was a very, very nice woman, very kind woman, very intelligent woman. Like I really respected her. And that was one of the reasons I was so upset when I learned that there were all these men's issues that were totally ignored, because I thought like dude, what the heck? Like what's the excuse for that? Like for a while I couldn't believe it. But that was in the book, right in the middle of it, there's a chart. It's literally a 2x2 chart where they have 4 quadrants and it's like a diamond, right? And they have like privileged versus oppressed of black and white, and then male and female, and they put the black women at the bottom to say they're double oppressed, and then white males at the top to say they're double privileged, right? And like they put it in a chart as if like that needed a chart somehow, like as if that's like actually like a graph you would need, right?
Well, they wanted to look scientific and shit.
Yeah.
To really low info people, I guess that probably looks intelligent, but yeah.
Yeah, it's so stupid. And these are the same people who like they love to call things reductionist, right? They love to be like, "Oh, that's so reductionist." Oh, blah, blah. And like if you are really trying to understand that kind of a worldview, then what it does is it makes you constantly play mental gymnastics with them, try to think, okay, well maybe it makes sense because of this and that, and it's so tiring. You just get tired out, and then you just miss sight of like how it's just so obviously bullshit. And I really think that's how it's become like a mainstay in academia, is not enough people are willing to kind of take a step back and look at what's going on, because they always feel like, well, maybe if I just read one more book, maybe if I just look at one more thing, maybe if I just reinterpret this paragraph one more time, it'll click in my brain and I'll get it. But that's not going to happen. It won't happen.
Well, that's the problem. A lot of people don't realize that not everything from academia is actually good. For example, not everyone knows that fascism became, it came from academia, basically.
Yeah, from Plato. From Plato, who's awful. He's terrible. Like,
yeah.
That's the thing too. Like you're so imagine you're a first year philosophy student. They say, here, read Plato, and like not a lot of people are gonna say, this sucks. I think Plato's wrong. Like not a lot of people have that level of, you might call it like hubris. Like I kind of did. I was kind of like, this seems like bullshit. I'll just kind of quietly like bite my tongue and just like listen and get what I can from it. But it seems like bullshit to me. But I think a lot of people,
idealism is pure bullshit. I mean, it was kind of outdated even back then, because back then were those I would call proto-empiricists, and it was like in ancient times. And nowadays, taking Plato seriously is kind of retarded. And same with a lot of other famous philosophers like Aristotle, or a lot of even rationalists. Like some people use rationalist as if it's a good thing. Well, rationalist doesn't mean that you are rational. Rationalism as a philosophical movement is the idea that you can deduce how the world works by rationing alone. So if empiricism is like the opposite, you have to rely on empirical evidence to deduce how the world works, or rather induce, because you are using usually incomplete data set, so we have to extrapolate. But rationalists think that if you really think really, really hard, you can come up with how the world works and understand the world just by reason alone, which is, well, I don't even need to say why it is retarded, because, well, you can reason all you want, but without the data, some data to feed into your reasoning, it's like garbage in, garbage out. You think what you want, but in the end, to come up with ideas about the real world, you need the real world data as a starting point, or else it's just mental masturbation.
No, yeah, and I think largely a lot of that's true. I have a soft spot for the rationalists. Like in the whole classic like argument between the rationalists and empiricists, it was the rationalists who I wanted to win and to prevail in the end. And like I like them. But ultimately when you're looking at like the way human beings exist and how we continue to survive, there's no way to take the empiricism out of it. But it is also, it's kind of a false dichotomy. It really is a false dichotomy. But
like rationalism can be used like for example, mathematics systems that are purely axiomatic. Like, for example, mathematics, it's made up. It doesn't operate with anything from real world, because you come up with those concepts of numbers and sets and other stuff, and you can be rationalist about that, because there's, in the end, all of the things you operate with, all of them are just made up. So it's those are only concepts in your mind. So of course rationalism is applicable there. It's like, or for example, the game of chess. Well, the chess pieces are real, but in the end, all they are just representing the abstract notions of chess pieces and their moves. So you can come up with any chess game, and every time, if you have this situation, and you can come up with how to win the round reliably, and it will be always like that, because in the end the rules are arbitrary and all are contained inside your mind. There's no extra variables that you cannot take into account, because you don't know them, unlike the real world, where the extra variables are like infinite, and you cannot possess the knowledge of all of them, even in theory. So that's why this notion of rationalism fails when it comes to the real world, because you don't have access to the information about real world directly. You have to experience it through gullible and not gullible, through not 100% reliable senses you have. And even if your senses were 100% reliable, they are not complete. For example, your eyes don't see the whole electromagnetic spectrum, but just a really, really tiny part of it. So even if your eyes would never lie to you, you still just observe only a tiny portion of what's around you, and well, you get the idea.
yeah, well, a lot of the basic building blocks of rationalism you would use, you'd kind of need to gain by like having some sort of empirical basis. So it's a little bit chicken and eggy in some ways. But Terrence wrote, I took a college class with a feminist angle, and we had take-home reading that was terrible lesbian erotic vagina poetry. I'm gonna guess, was it Ansel Dua? Was it Ansel Dua? Was it Borderlands? Because that's actually like a weirdly popular one, and I have no frickin' clue why. I have no idea. That might be a really fun one to go through, because that shit is crazy. That shit is absolutely just bananas. Anyway, that's a whole tangent. I need to go into Ansel Dua, but it'd be really amusing if that was exactly who it was. If it was Borderlands by Ansel Dua. Okay, so then, where were we? Oh yeah. The purpose of domination is to keep an unequal social order in place, providing privileges to one group at the expense of another. It is not a natural state and can only be kept in place by violence and or the constant threat of it. Wealth is amassed through a system of exploitation and forced dependency. Those in power take a disproportionate amount of resources and labor, which, in turn, strips the exploited of having sufficient means to provide for themselves. Consequently, their survival depends on those who are the cause of their problems in the first place. This is not what one calls a balanced state. Without a worldview that justified violence, hierarchy would be in sorry shape. There's
Oh,
hierarchy bad. There's your hierarchy bad bingo. Bingo. In case there was any
yeah, but
doubt on that
hierarchy
one.
and domination are as natural as they go. I mean, come on, does this
Well,
bitch know about nature? Fucking
it's
hell.
such a cliched thing that they always comment on, that, their obsession with power. It's like any time there's an imbalance of power, they'll just assume it to be always wrong. Any imbalance of power means there must be injustice. That they seem to take this as axiomatic almost, with no evidence.
Well, and it's like the video you sent me this morning about about the idea that there's racial bias in hiring, and how if you actually look at the data and look at how you deconstruct it all, there's no reason to assume that it's because of like racial bias. And in fact, you have like the opposite mechanism. So then what do you do with that data at that point? You can't just continue to assume that what, like, because obviously she thinks that you have to implement some sort of a system, right? Some sort of a communist system in order to get rid of these evil hierarchies, even though the state of nature is always going to find a way around that. I guess I kind of feel like there's a way for capitalists to hijack ecofeminism. Sort of like the same way that the men's movement, you can say that, like, well, the men's movement are the real feminists because we actually want things to be equal, equal in a way, right? In terms of like just basic rights, not like equity. But I'm not
Speaking of,
personally a fan of that argument. Like I don't I'm
Sorry,
not.
what are you not a fan of?
Well, just the idea that like the men's movement wants real equality. Like we're the real feminists, right? Because there's so many problems with it. Like I'd rather
Right.
just get rid of all feminism. But it's a useful rhetorical thing to mention to people to get people to think about things in a different way.
And the point about hierarchy always arising no matter what, there's sort of a microcosm of this that's interesting to explore, is that when feminists complain about female, I don't know, beauty standards or female objectification or all this, the thing is they'll also complain about the opposite standard, that is modesty cultures. And when you raise this apparent inconsistency with them, what they'll say is something like, well, I think anyway, they would say something like this, that it's not about preferring a culture that values modesty or preferring a culture that values, I guess, the opposite of modesty, whatever you want to say about that. It's just the idea of having any sort of standard at all, or the idea of valuing anything at all. Because if you value something, then that would make some people feel insecure or feel unequal, which is bad. But it's like, as long as people are different in any way at all, any describable way, and as long as there are particular things that people value, there's always going to be these little insecurities. You just have to deal with it.
Yeah, well, and even just at an atomic level, a hierarchy is established by any preference. If I go to McDonald's and I say today I want the fish fillet and not the double cheeseburger, I have established a hierarchy of my preference for lunch at that moment, and it places the fish fillet above the double cheeseburger.
Right.
And that's the thing is you can't make an argument without establishing hierarchy. Right now she's saying what is it she prefers? So domination bad. Okay, so things are preferable to domination. She has created a hierarchy where domination is lower than the other ones. So it's another term that's like it's kind of useless. It's just like if you really analyze it and take it down to the most basic essential level, then
I wonder how exactly she would define domination, though, because there are situations in which, well, for instance, it's probably a good idea for a person who's severely mentally retarded to be dominated in some respects uh, by their carer, or to just defer all decision making to their carer because they can't do it for themselves. But would she say that that's a bad thing? It's interesting.
that's another thing too. Is what's the standard for comparison, right? It's just it always goes back to Thomas Sowell. Compared to what? Compared to what? Because if that
Right.
person, if they're not being dominated by a caregiver, well, then they're just going to be dominated by just the reality of nature, that they're gonna have trouble procuring like the basic necessities of what they need to live, right? So it's not a question of comparing a state of domination to whatever this like communist, anarcha feminist utopia she's envisioning is. It's compared to what? Because hierarchy is going to emerge in one way or another. All right, let's see how this one closes out. She says, if socially sanctioned behaviors were rooted in a paradigm of harmony, assuming people are naturally peaceful, we would not be faced with death and destruction at every turn. We don't need the return of the benevolent warrior to protect the king's property rights, whether over land or women. We need to extricate territorial thinking out of our psyches.
Well, territorialism is part of nature. Like some animals are extremely territorial.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. Like, so
Also,
she thinks that defending property rights is going to be more difficult than extricating territorial thinking out of our psyches. Like, I don't know, dude.
well, if she just means excluding people, I'm sure there are plenty of people that she feels that way towards. So
Yeah, I'm sure that there's all kinds of property that she wouldn't appreciate people violating. I mean, her argument against property rights is, I don't like this idea that women are owned as property, which that's not a fucking idea. That's not a
wait,
thing.
is she actually a communist? Like, is she?
I mean, I would say that I would argue that even if she doesn't self-identify as a communist, that based on this, I would call her one. And I'm not sure how much weight I'm going to give her self-identification given the way that she's using words. I don't know if that's mean, but like
It's cool.
but yeah, like it's another self-defeating argument. You have a problem with the idea that one person can own another person. Well, why is that? Because people own themselves. That was like, I had the debate with Omni Zoa, and he was like, I don't like self-ownership. And I'm like, I don't like, how do you even respond to that? I'm like, well, you use the pronoun I, and I just feel like that's enough. Like, I don't know, is that too simple? I don't know. Like, okay, so then the next part she calls it culture of denial. Owners never own up to their power. I think we're gonna tick off man up if we haven't yet. No one wants to acknowledge that their comforts are made possible through the suffering of others. It is taboo to name power. In the US, money equals power. When was the last time you asked someone how much their salary was, or how much they stood to inherit, or how large their trust fund was? No one wants to talk about the power he or she does have. We each only speak about how we are oppressed or how terrible the conditions are for those disadvantaged people, as if there were no relationship between being disadvantaged and being advantaged. Privilege is access to resources, protected by institutionalized control, backed up by violence. There can be no progressive social movement without addressing issues of power.
So sounds like really something an anarchist would say.
Yeah, I mean, basically, she just thinks that if somebody has something, it's the zero-sum game theory of economics. It's a distinctly leftist idea, right? Basically, like, oh, the United States was built on slave labor, which is, it's like obviously demonstrably not true. Like, it's, you know, I think she's taking that as an axiom, and if you accept that axiom, then sure, I guess a lot of this follows. But it's a silly thing to admit, especially if you acknowledge that human societies have become more wealthy over time, right? If we've become more wealthy over time, then, you know, clearly we're not just taking things, right? Like there's some creation that's happening. They don't seem to believe in any kind of creation. Maybe that's why feminists can't like make their own characters and can't like make their own things. They don't believe in creation. They believe that it must be stolen, so that's why we can make a Batwoman, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys see that trailer, by the way?
Yes, it was dreadful.
I think it's gonna actually, it's gonna have that that like Z movie effect that's gonna make it really entertaining. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm very optimistic.
I hope so.
Did you guys notice she was a woman? Okay. Anarcho-communism is an oxymoron to those who understand reality and redundant to those who believe in it. Yeah, that sums it up really nicely. I'm in the oxymoron camp, but I mean, anarcho-capitalists, we kind of have the same problem where, like, ideally, I'd rather it just not be a term, right? That's just it's just a term for like believing in property, which is like kind of like you can't not. I don't need to go too deep into that. Oh, I just realized I moved to the next page a little early. Oh no, I only have 2 sentences. Never mind. Okay, so she writes, nowhere in the pages of Iron John is the subject raised. This omission amounts to an evasion of the real issues, and therefore the perpetuation of institutionalized power relations. The systemic social systems of the society. Instead, Bly has a propensity toward painting men as oppressed by women. The absurdity of this position is obvious to anyone who is not being mesmerized by myth and faces the truth that American women live with every day. Oh, here we go. Here's the woman worsting. This reality is reflected in the following facts. Women only make 60 cents on the dollar.
Oh,
Ah, we got the pay gap. This is
Yeah, we just
bingo.
ticked off-
Every sheet has a bingo now. Reset.
Ticked off 2 things at once.
Yeah, so women only make 66 cents to every dollar men make, and a man with only a high school diploma makes $1,000 a year more than a woman with a 4-year college education. The violence that
it's
upholds...
their problem that they chose to educate themselves in, medieval poetry or some other bullshit that doesn't matter.
No, yeah. Actually, TFM had an interesting bit about this. He was looking at an article where they were arguing that that hypergamy is no longer a thing because women are now marrying down. And their standard for defining that women were marrying down was, well, look at all these women with 4-year degrees who are marrying men who don't have 4-year degrees. And it's like, yeah, those men are still making more money. It's funny how... This is a little bit like the Who Stole Feminism effect, where it reads like it could have been written yesterday. They don't evolve, they don't adapt, they don't evolve, they don't learn anything. Except instead of holding the line at 66 cents an dollar, now they've
Right.
bumped it up, right? Now I think they're at 92 cents is what they're at.
Well, the thing about these numbers is they literally could just make them up just at random, like a number between 0.00 and 1, anything. And the thing is, they could do it because people would take it seriously. No matter what they said, it seems like a lot of people would take them seriously.
Well, yeah, because if you trust that someone is educated on the subject and that it's decent information, there's also this emotional effect where it's like, oh, I feel bad, I don't want the women to be oppressed, and like most people I think just don't get past that emotional argument. I think that's the problem.
Well, by the way, since you remember when you mentioned like all the argument that this is the real feminism, check out Discord. I sent you a meme I made today about what is real feminism.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that in a little bit here. I think how many pages are left in this one? Okay, all right, we'll keep on keeping on. We have a lot of important women's issues to highlight here. We had to make sure we got that in here. The violence that upholds this status quo has reached epidemic proportions. Every 8 seconds, a man beats a woman. That amounts to nearly 500 women encountering male brutality every hour. Some 100,000 rapes were reported in 1990. If that is not appalling enough, it is estimated that only 1 rape in 8 is reported. Therefore, it is likely that 800,000 women were raped by men in that year. It is no wonder that so many men prefer myth to reality.
What was it? Wife beating every 8 seconds. Hey, you know what else? Every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes.
No way.
Oh, there was...
No way. That's a lot of minutes if you add up all the seconds.
Yeah. Like, remember the joke about which is like the woke band? Remember which one was? Yeah, so the goes on stage and between songs, just when everyone is quiet, he just starts clapping. Because every time I clap, a person in Africa dies, and then someone from the crowd like, "Stop clapping, you fucking idiot!"
Yeah, that's superstitious thinking or whatever.
The other thing too is it's a classic thing where she's not making a comparison to men's issues. The assertion is just this never happens to men. Because if we were to take these numbers and then say, okay, well, knowing what we know about domestic violence stats, where it's roughly 50% reciprocal, and then the other half is like 70% initiated by women, I guess that means that what, like something like we would multiply this by like 1 point, I don't know, 1.5 or 1.6 or whatever. I'm not great at math, but the point remains. You could just compare it to like an even greater number, right? Like, could you just
Yeah,
imagine, like, the men's movement taken to that level of hysteria?
and female perpetrated domestic violence is a topic that's really only been covered in any detail by sociologists who are just describing these phenomena, but it hasn't really been discussed in any interesting way by, say, psychology or evolutionary psychology. No real effort has been made to come up with any kind of adaptive explanations for the the differences in male and female manifestations of domestic violence, because most discussions of it just assume that it's a male phenomenon. So
The closest I can think to it, it was something that Karen Strawn had mentioned about,
natural history of rape.
well, the utility of nagging, actually. Is this idea that humans may have been selected for women who nag, because if a woman nags her husband to get him to go and procure more resources to really ensure that he works himself down to the bone to get as many resources as possible, compared with women who are much more amiable or amicable. I'm not sure the differences between those words now that I think about it. But anyway, like the idea is that the families where you have like a good, strong, nagging woman, they may have survived, right? They may have had enough resources for the children to then like reach adulthood and continue onward. Whereas a woman who doesn't nag as much, maybe the man doesn't quite produce enough and they all starve to death.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. I don't know. I get that there's multiple steps where you might.
Well, it's interesting, or
It's interesting.
maybe those types of people just didn't have as many children by choice. It's interesting.
Yeah, or even that, right? Might not even be like a survival thing, but maybe like the nagging wife had more or something. But and then I guess I'm not really sure if we can how much of a stretch it is to go from nagging to beating your husband up. I think there's a little bit of some steps I think in between there, but that's the closest I can think about if we were thinking about like analysis of like explaining why this problem exists. Like, but basically the point is you have to go to YouTube to find that. Like. And that's why this is academics respond to women respond to the men's movement. Because you know what? The academics in academia, they're not there. They're not there. The academics are on YouTube. We're storming the ivory tower. Or rather, we're building a crappy new one, and we're celebrating it for what it is. Maybe the rape rate goes down when men are busy doing gay drum stuff in the forest. Maybe. But this is another funny thing, too, is she closed that up by saying, it is no wonder so many men prefer myth to reality. So she's acknowledging that people generally think rape is bad. I'll at least give her that, right? But I'm wondering, how does this really square with this idea that she seems to just think that we're all in denial about power and how power oppresses everyone? It's almost like it doesn't make sense. If I may suggest so humbly that this is bullshit. Alright, there is nothing unusual about Bly's approach. That's not true. That is bullshit. There's really no one like him. He's really, really unique. I say look up Robert Bly, look up what he does. He's very unique. He's his own person, like completely. Wait, but let's see why she thinks there's nothing unique about it, nothing unusual about it. When power is taboo to name, then history goes through a metamorphosis. It becomes mythology. The mainstream portrays history through images that protect the virtue of the American dream. Columbus is lost, but gets credited for discovering America. no matter that people have been living here for thousands of years. Genocide of native peoples is reduced to cowboy and Indian movies. Slavery is heroically resolved by the Civil War. The stealing of northern Mexico is called settling the West. To protect our humanity...
Wasn't there a war? I mean, stealing and winning in a war are different things, no?
Yeah, I think so. A little. I mean, I can kind of see the argument, like, if it's just a war for straight up, like, taking your shit, you know? But, I don't think that was really the case in American history, was it? I think that you had a lot of property that either was unclaimed or was in contention, and that you had ongoing wars. And, you know, I don't really see a reason that, like, European tribes should be seen differently from the tribes that were there. You know, and then
Right.
also they were nomadic too, so it's kind of bullshit to like establish all of that as their territory and all of that as land that they own when it's not really homesteaded. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very few people anyway, especially in North America.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, I mean, you could make an argument for that, but then like basically you're going to be delegitimizing like all nations, and I don't think that anybody's really has the integrity to maintain that position without being a hypocrite. But I mean, sure, like I guess we could say maybe humans have reached a point where we don't need to be, you know, conquering each other to take each other's land. There's really not much utility in that, like with the way technologically things are right now. At least I don't think so. Maybe that's optimistic, but
Balkanizing is probably more optimal now, as in smaller territories with more particularist attitudes. I don't know.
yeah. Because it seems like the disadvantages of that historically have all kind of been negated by like the internet and just like more sophisticated forms of trade. Basically, I think cryptocurrency ends war and is going to solve all of our problems. Just all in on cryptocurrency, just saving everything, so we don't have to even think about this. Fingers crossed. To protect our humanity, Americans have developed a culture of polished ignoring, otherwise known as denial. As Americans, we have a short memory. Our history disappears from view, so our social relationships don't enter our consciousness, and everything is seen as an outgrowth of the successes or failures of individuals. I love the irony of this, that you have a feminist, a woman worster, someone who buys into patriarchy theory, complaining about how other people forget history and are short-sighted. It's beautiful. It's perfect.
Well, self-awareness has never been a feminist strong point.
No, yeah, and that's the thing. She's gonna complain. Oh, we forgot about all the brown people, right? Because that's these white women want to adopt all of the third world. It's very maternalistic, right? So then, yeah, it's so crazy how in plain sight it is. Where it's like, well, what about the gender dynamic? As in, like the real gender dynamic. As in, you actually look at both sides of the things that you're comparing, allegedly. All right, so then, I should probably get the next page ready. But the next section is called Missionaries for the Politically Correct. And she begins, "It is deeply ingrained in the psyches of all Americans to think in individual terms. Even those of us who know the personal is political typically view failure as our own fault and become arrogant when we succeed. Becoming anti-racist for white people has many similarities to becoming anti-sexist for men. Living and learning immersed in a culture of denial, most white people do not find out what is behind affluence. It is to our credit that we take the time to uncover the truth behind what makes our comforts possible."
It certainly is.
I think she should take her own advice. like, I agree. I agree, lady.
It's funny how if we use the same, well, you know who else use the same logic, but how about affluence, but not towards white people, but towards Jewish people, how they are affluent and how it's yeah. What I'm trying to say is that feminazi. There's a reason why they are called feminazis, because there was another ideology. that strive to correct bring the social justice and correct the imbalances of power and wealth and redistribute and first they tell them to check their privilege, then next they mark them with stars of David, then they put them in camps. Yeah, same thing. And by the way, as a side, the concept of social justice was prominently featured in fascist propaganda. Like even Mussolini talked about social justice a lot. That they strive to achieve social justice and equality for all. Yeah, sounds
But
familiar.
I guess it's kind of a fuzzy concept. It could mean a lot of things, but certainly the way these people are using it doesn't seem very interesting.
No, yeah, like okay, my hot take on that though is I think feminazi is like too generous. Like I that's what people always they try to shit on Rush Limbaugh for coining that term. They're like, "Oh my god, that's so divisive. I can't believe he would say that." And I'm like, "Well, you know what? Like maybe you should have taken that deal. Maybe you should have taken the deal to just be compared to Nazis because you know what? I'm going to compare you to even worse things because I think you deserve it. I think it's just if you're going to be realistic about it, I honestly think that the Nazis. I'd rather defend Nazis than defend feminists. I know that's a spicy thing to say. It's an edgy thing to say, but I honestly, legitimately think that that's more defensible.
Well, unironically, this.
Like, imagine if, for example, if feminist patriarchy theory were only directed at like a particular like religion. Instead, it's directed at like 50% of all the human beings that have ever lived. Right? So like that's a level of dehumanization that the Nazis could have only dreamed about. I think Hitler would blush. He would blush, like, compared to the crap feminists have gotten away with. So, I don't know. That's.
There was also recently, brought to my attention that one of the modern feminist heroes, she was like, a paleobotanist and also a prominent early, birth control enthusiast, for lack of a better term. And she's quite prominent, and a lot of a lot of feminists now praise her, and yet she was actually a Nazi sympathizer and wrote letters to Hitler praising him, like literally feminazi. Oh, and of course, she was a big fanatic of big fan of eugenics, to the point of she was so fanatical that she disowned her son because he married a girl who wore glasses, and therefore she was like not a perfect specimen or something. So she didn't, you know, disowned her own son because of that. Just
Oh, that's
totally
funny.
normal and well
Wait, wait,
adjusted
wait.
individual.
Is this Sanger?
No, it's a different. Sanger wasn't as crazy, believe it or not. Actually, let me find her name. Okay, somewhere. I think she was one of the British.
Because that is pretty cartoonish to be like, you wear glasses. I read a
So
thing. Somebody was claiming that eyeglasses are bullshit. If you just exercise your eyes, then you don't need them, and the whole thing is a scam. And I thought that seems a little far fetched, just a little. Eyeglasses and snake oil.
So let me find
You
it
must
real
see
quick.
loads of people wearing eyeglasses in Hong Kong because apparently myopia is really common in East Asians, like short-sightedness. Something like 80% of East Asians are short-sighted. It's kind of funny.
I don't know. I think a lot of them must be wearing contacts, but I guess I haven't thought of it so
Right.
much. The funny thing is, I'll wear contacts sometimes, and then like the kids will be like, "Whoa, where are your glasses?" And I'll be like, "I'm wearing them on my eyes," and they're like, "What?" They're like, "Nani?" Like,
Oh, found the name. Marie Stopes.
Marie
That's her.
Stopes.
And I'll even post a link to an article about her. Oh, so it's
I kind of like this idea of there being just a whole genre of like historical lol cows. Just like crazy people from times past. Because everybody thinks you gotta find like unhinged and weird people who like freak out on the internet in the current year. But I think that there's probably a very, very rich history of totally crazy people that we've been neglecting. And I'm gonna do my small bit of it by making fun of these stupid feminists whose crap was in this awful book from the 90s.
Oh, but by the way, this bitch had some really, really interesting views. She said that the half caste should be sterilized. I suppose she meant like, I don't know, mixed race or something. And also, further than one third of British men should be forcibly sterilized, starting with the ugly and unfit. Feminist hero, everyone.
Well, that must just be out of context, right? Just like Mary Daly, right?
Also, let me read another quote from this. Stopes was a Nazi supporter. In 1935, she attended Nazi Congress for population science in Berlin. 4 years later, she sent Hitler a gushing personal letter along with a volume of her love poems. Dear Herr Hitler, love is the greatest thing in the world, so will you accept from me these that you may allow the young people of your nation to have them? A poem of hers from 1942, at the height of the Jewish Holocaust, has this to say: Catholics and Prussians, the Jews and the Russians, all are a curse on something worse.
Man, that's cartoonish. That's literally like if this were a cartoon version of reality, that's the kind of feminist we'd find. Well, I guess Margo Adair is a little bit not quite so spicy. I wish they had included, what's her name, Marie Stopes?
Yeah.
Marie, Marie, and then Stopes, Stopes.
Yeah. Well, I sent you a link to an article about her in Discord.
Grab it. Where is it? That's what's crap open. I'll check things. Hey, this is your real feminism meme. Skulls. Oh yeah, the Aztecs were all for gender equality. Oh, that's right. I remember reading about that. They sacrificed the women as well as men. That's good.
Nice.
Marie Stopes. Oh yeah, I guess the spelling right.
I remember looking up tables at some point for judicial corporal punishment around the world, like lashings and stuff, and death penalties. The only first world country that has judicial corporal punishment is Singapore, where you can be sentenced to strikes of the cane for doing graffiti or whatever. But this only applies to males. But there are some societies, I think in Africa, where they do cane the females just as much as the males, which is fun.
And of course that's the one where they cane women, you know.
Yeah.
This woman, if you look at her face, I don't know, is my screen sharing or is it?
Spaceman, you know what else? One in 300,000 industrial fishing accidents is a woman, Spaceman.
Well, we gotta stop that. We gotta get those numbers up. Well, this is what I joke that if we really want gender, what?
Yeah, I was just riffing off like the 1 in 7 homeless people meme.
No, exactly. But I think, hey, if we really want gender equality, what women need to do instead of having their next like pussy march or whatever. They're calling it pussy march. I forget. What they should do is have they should organize a mass workplace suicide, because that way they can close a lot of the gaps, right? They can close the suicide gap, they can close the workplace death gap, and what other gap are they closing? I forget. But you know, and they'll be closing the age gap too, right? Make sure you get as young as you possibly can. The youngest women you possibly can. They need to all go commit suicide at work. And there we go. That's maximum equality.
And also, this would this would also tie into the whole eugenics thing, because a lot of feminist heroes were eugenicists. So
But these are the most noble and virtuous among women who would be doing this. So it would not be eugenics.
well, then they're feminists. So their virtue would be, their virtue would be to remove themselves from the gene pool. So that's why they're virtuous, not because of their
Well, yeah,
virtuous.
I'm sure we could sell them on kind of the antinatalist angle.
Well, the wonderful thing about that is that they're doing it anyway. I would imagine that feminists reproduce at a lower rate than average, which can only be good, because if you accept the premise, and obviously I guess you can reject it and then there's no point, but if you accept the premise that political views and attitudes are determined or are a function of genes to any degree, it
Oh, they
means,
are.
yeah,
It's determined that political views are heritable, because there were like twin studies. It's
yeah,
the most reliable method to determine how, or, if a trait is heritable. Well, the most reliable way that is ethical, because science could advance very, very fast if you just stop caring about being ethical. Like Dr. Mengele had some interesting discoveries. Just saying.
yeah. I don't know if you've seen like the Hatami study from 2010, but that was a big one on all of these different political attitudes, the heritability of political attitudes to the death penalty and feminism and abortion, all the way down the list, and also just general political orientation, left to right orientation. And the heritability of just general left to right orientation is close to 100%. Like if you correct for measurement error, which is impressive.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I was just thinking that um, feminists are being selected against genetically because they don't breed or breed at a lower rate than average, which has got to be good. So they're doing their own work if they're eugenicists. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big supporter of abortions, because given what kind of people usually get abortions, I wouldn't want them to reproduce anyways.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to that argument, but I wouldn't call myself a supporter of abortion. It's
And
still,
also given that
it's.
also given the fact that the more times a woman gets an abortion, the more it's likely that she gets her reproductive organs damaged beyond repair and is going to be unable to reproduce anymore anyway. So those women who think that abortion is not like a last resort option, but just normal ways of birth control, well, they will their ability to reproduce will be forfeit by their own stupidity. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. Yay!
There we go. There we go. Man, we are solving a lot of problems. We have so many good solutions. I deserve my medal. We should all get medals.
Well, I guess the argument from selection pressure isn't so much a man-made solution. It's just letting nature take its course, which is another funny thing because these eco-feminists are all about nature and all that.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, is that it's like we're supposed to just accept the natural flow of nature, I guess whenever they like it. But then this idea that the flow of nature was toward patriarchy, oh, well that's not nature now. I really think that it's just shit that they like. That gets to be nature. Shit they don't like, that's not nature anymore. Is it really that simple? I feel like it can't possibly be that
Yes.
simple, but all right, this God, look at this woman's crazy. I'm gonna take her little bug eyes and I'm gonna put her down here in the corner. She's so scary. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hide her. There now. She's just staring at us.
Eye rape.
Staring at us. She knows I'm wearing glasses. She's disgusted. All right, so Let's see. It is to our credit when we take the time to uncover the truth behind what makes our comforts possible. Upon learning the true history of people of color in the U.S. and the fact that they are more than twice as likely to live in poverty than whites are, we whites usually respond with a deep self-loathing, as though we are individually to blame. We feel profoundly guilty. We often lose a sense of our own legitimacy, cave in on ourselves, and become crusaders for the cause, vigilantly on the lookout for any individual who might possibly be construed as a racist. When spotted, we go on a rampage to expose and purge the offender, who more often than not has no idea what specifically he or she did wrong. I completely agree with this section. I think that this is on the nose. Yeah, this is a very accurate depiction of how anti-racists tend to operate. This is because the cultural norms that uphold white privilege are taken for granted and are therefore invisible to those who have it. No, Margo, that is not why. That is not. She was so close. She was so close. It is only through a process of consciousness raising. I need to add consciousness raising to the bingo sheet. Consciousness raising, patriarchy, and maybe apocalypse, like doomsday. That's another one. Those three are ones.
Is she heading towards some kind of a reparations argument here?
I think we're getting there, but the consciousness raising, right, is... I mean, it's kind of a silly term. It's basically just advocacy. Advocacy is just consciousness raising.
Maybe they mean expanding the consciousness, with this way of expanding your consciousness.
Well, it kind of is. I mean, it's... I also, when it comes to rape, I call it rape farming. They're trying to convince people that they were raped when they weren't. So it's a practice of rape farming. And consciousness raising is when you do that by convincing someone who wasn't raped that they were raped. But consciousness raising was, I think, particularly a thing in regards to like domestic violence or domestic abuse in general. And there's nothing there, like there's something to be said for this idea that you have like a dynamic where, people are abused and they don't realize it. But I think that these physical forms of domestic violence and abuse, I think that's not really where that's happening. It's more the psychological angle, I think, where you would need to kind of wake people up. I think that, like getting beaten is a pretty, it's kind of its own wake-up call. But
by the way, since you mentioned systemic inequality and that minorities are disadvantaged by the system, well, her fellow feminist Margaret Sanger had a solution for that. Her solution was to use eugenics because it was the most adequate and thorough avenue to the solution of racial, political, and social problems. So no darkies, no oppression of darkies, right?
Yeah, well, everybody is all for equality until it's time to start doing equality things. I think that's what it comes down to. Okay, let's see. She says, it is only through a process of consciousness raising that anyone in the position of privilege comes to understand how their worldview is racist or sexist. Needless to say, the atmosphere created by the politically correct crusaders does not exactly lend itself to learning. Instead, the ones who need to learn have left the scene so as to avoid further trashing. What really motivates the PC zealots is their frenzied need to absolve themselves of their own guilt and recover their legitimacy. They do this by proving to themselves and the rest of the world that they are different from their peers. This pattern of righteousness, the politically correct syndrome, created an open invitation on which the right wing capitalized. This syndrome has driven many allies into reaction. I think that is very prescient. I think that's... Yeah, I think that actually...
She almost gets it. She's so close.
She's so close. She's so close. See, but she's kind of engaging in the same thing, right? She's not really doing anything different from what these other PC zealots are doing. She's just jacked it up one level of abstraction. So she can be like the alpha enlightened, right? She's the consciousness raised above the consciousness raised. Guilt convolutes individuals and makes progressive change impossible. It is rooted in individualist thinking, which in turn is kept in place by having no historical perspective. Not only has the history of people of color been distorted, white people have also been denied their history. For example, nearly every American knows the song Amazing Grace, yet most of us are unaware it was written by a man named John Newton, the captain of a slave ship who became a leading abolitionist. We don't learn about our foremothers and forefathers who refused to strike the deal, relinquished loyalty to principle in exchange for getting onto the ladder of upward mobility. Challenging the rules has never been the way to get, much less keep, a job. And if promotion is what it is strived for, then learn the rules and enforce them on those a rung below. That was in parentheses. Sorry, I'll get the next page to be on top. Put that here, and then... Man, look at this. This is like night and day. Look how good this looks. This looks so amazing. I have multiple things showing and moved around in really smart ways. It's just really well balanced. Compare this to how the stream began. I think we've come a very long way. We are leveling up in OBS, and this is so good. So I'm so proud of myself. The end. Okay. And I lost my place. Where are we? Okay. Not all people of European descent have colluded with the racist policies in this country. When we learn of our anti-racist predecessors, we are freed from guilt. We can take pride in our heritage and can work for social justice out of a position of integrity. It is imperative that we reclaim our history. Up until recently, men who took a principled stand in relation to women's rights were also hidden from us. I applaud Kimmel and Mossmiller. Oh, there's Kimmel. There's Michael Kimmer. Michael Kimmel, our Nomas man. He was featured in the Red Pill documentary, and Paul Elam did a nice response to that segment of it. And I think you can also see Red Pill raw files. You can see like the unedited or at least longer form version of that interview, which is infuriating in a similar vein. But yeah, you'll notice in the feminist males that they endorse in these is really, really telling. They're always just these just annoying, preachy, weird homosexuals. I'm pretty sure every single one of them is like a weird gay dude telling straight men how they should be and what masculinity is. He was the dude who got Me Too'd. Yeah, I think he did. Well, did he get Me Too'd by a man? I'm like genuinely curious. So like, let's see. I applaud Kimmel and Mossmiller, who have just published Against the Tide, Pro-Feminist Men in the United States. It took them 5 years to uncover this unprecedented 500-page documentary history. This work empowers men to move beyond guilt. When men have a heritage they can take pride in, they won't have the problem Bly calls going soft. In addition to feeding the hunger for a spirituality, the mythopoetic movement is popular because it offers a respite from the righteousness of PC crusaders. Men's retreats offer a space to restore their humanity in a context that is not fraught with the potential humiliation of being nailed on their sexism. But ultimately, the efforts are futile. For the only way to restore lost humanity is through working to bring about justice. Humanity has lost by capitulating to an unjust system in the first place. The golden key to men's well-being does not need to be stolen out from under their mother's pillow, as Bly tells us. Men simply need to join the collective struggle to bring about justice. So you can check off man up on your bingo sheet. But, yeah, so that's what she's saying. She's saying that, the problem of men not having a positive good masculinity, this is solved if we just promote male feminist history. She's saying, well, look at all the ways that you were a good feminist. Look at all the ways that you really, really helped women, right? That's how men should gain their pride, right? It's just a classic example of this idea that men need to get their sense of purpose and identity from serving women. You guys are still here, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, good. It was really quiet, and I was like, oh no, did the Hangouts poop out? Because that would have been...
Yeah, but it's amazing how solipsistic they are in that way.
Yeah, and it's like they're going all the way back through history to collect, the entire hive mind. But I guess that would be an interesting thing to go through. Against the Tide, pro-feminist men in the United States. I guess that's a 500-page tome about the history of male feminism. Ugh. Ugh.
Would it include the legislators who gave women the vote? Because you see, that's interesting. On the one hand, they'll say that history was just filled with female subjugation, but then there are apparently endless examples of men being what she would call good feminists in history. So,
Mm-hmm. Someone mentioned the women are owned like chattel guy. That was Matt Binder, I think is his name. He's like one of the co-host people on Sam Cedar's podcast, which is
the
awful.
women owned like chattel. Is that the thing?
Women were owned like chattel. Women were chattel. I think I think he might have said cattle.
Yeah, that's.
I think he
the
might have
first time-
actually said cattle. Women were
Yeah,
cattle.
Yeah, I thought he was saying cattle, and that was the joke. Like, yeah,
Well, the funny thing too is it's ridiculous even to say chattel. Like, even if he had gotten the right frickin' word, it would have been ridiculous. Like,
obviously, yeah.
well, and then with the body pause movement, women really did become cattle.
Yeah, but it's just the whole mental image of I don't know, women being kept in dormitories somewhere and like used for their milk or whatever. Cows, etc.
God, Sam Cedar is the worst. Faraday Speaks like linked me a video of him quote unquote debunking Peter Schiff, and it was like it's just terrible. Just like the worst reasoning ever. I'm like, why? Why do you think this is an argument at all? Actually, this is really amusing. Faraday Speaks called into Molyneux's like Q&A thing,
Oh
and
dear.
it was super funny. I was gonna make a little video featuring just that clip because it's super funny. Anyway, I guess I won't spoil it. I'll let that speak for itself when I upload that later. I'm gonna do that today. Okay. Where are we? I always lose my spot. Okay, so men's retreats offer a space to restore their humanity in a context that is not fraught with the potential humiliation of being nailed on their sexism. But ultimately, the efforts are futile, for the only way to restore lost humanity is through working to bring about justice. Humanity was lost by capitulating to an unjust system in the first place. Oh yeah, we already read this. And then the Golden Key reference. That's a reference to the Iron John thing, which, yeah, again, I recommend everybody take a look at that, the Iron John poem and story, because it's pretty fascinating. But of course, that the image of taking the key to unlock the wild man, that the key is hidden under his mother's pillow. It's a little bit Freudian, and the feminists really don't like that. Spirituality without an analysis of power is dangerous, but social change activism without honoring everyone's humanity will lead us nowhere. If, by a fluke, we do get anywhere, it is likely to feel strikingly familiar. We are fully capable of duplicating relations of domination, with no institutional backup, despite our best intentions. We may have a generosity of spirit toward one another as we support each other in the simultaneous struggle to transform ourselves and bring about social justice. Okay, let me grab the next pages. I don't know, is it big enough that people would be able to read it on the screen? Because I'm looking at it in the OBS window and like I can see it okay. So I think if it's full screened on the like actual YouTube screen, I'm pretty sure it's pretty readable. I tried to get it as flat as I could. I was looking up to see if there was a place I could go to that would just scan a whole book for me and then give me a PDF, and people were like, are you retarded? That's like so many copyright issues that'll never exist. And I'm like, why? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you own a book, like that shouldn't be an issue, and like it shouldn't be their responsibility to determine that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess I'm just like. I guess I'm just being a whiner. Can I upload multiple images at once? Do I just doing this? do it individually. Okay, fine. I think we're on page 9 of power. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And we'll just go ahead and grab all of these. We're just going to grab them all. So, okay, so for now that I know how to do some of this stuff, I know what I can do to prep this better for next time. Do I not have number 10? Or did I just not name it number 10? I'm just going to grab the ones I have, and if we're missing one, then we'll grab it later. Oh, because I named them that way, so that means I must be... Yeah, I'm missing page 10. How gay. I don't need Facebook. Facebook is stupid. I don't need... I love that YouTube gaming is open. I guess bingo technically makes us gaming, doesn't it? I want to be a bingo gaming streamer. I want to stream bingo on Twitch. I used YouTube gaming just when I was making my idle pouring streams, because I thought just the idea of streaming idle pouring was just like a funny inside joke. And then I was talking to someone on caffeine, and I was mentioning Ragnarok Online, like the actual game, and they're like, that's a clicker. And I'm like, it is not a clicker. You're thinking of idle pouring, which was the clicker they made. And they're like, that's a clicker. And I'm like, fuck this website. I'm never going to use it again. Because one person pissed me off. The end. Okay. Okay, so I got the next few pages here. Wait, is this the same? This is the same. I just named it wrong. Oh my gosh, I'm so unprofessional. Okay, I'm just going to delete this one. Okay, let's just continue. I'll grab the next thing. So the next section is called Patterns of Power. Male privilege is only one form of power among many. Class privilege, white skin privilege, heterosexual privilege, to name a few. It's interesting. Of all the intersectional dimensions, those are the only ones they ever mention. They don't mention anything else that make up an individual. It's just interesting. I suppose they would call that differences that make a difference. Power, no matter what kind, is kept in place through the same patterns of domination. These patterns force the privileged to stiffen up, be emotionally suppressed, remote, and alienated so that the inhumanity of controlling others is not felt. Control yourself so you can control others without flinching. Have you ever noticed that the more privilege people have, the more control patterns they exhibit, and the further away from power, the more spontaneity, humor, and open affection people display? Wait, why is this in... She uses parentheses in an annoying way. So the further away from power, the more spontaneity, humor, and open affection they display. I don't know, is this another chicken and egg thing? Where she's saying, oh, look at these people who have a lot of power. They're so serious and they control their emotions. And people who don't have a lot of power are much more spontaneous. Like, doesn't that kind of tell you something? Like...
Having spontaneous leaders isn't always great.
Yeah.
Because they tend to wreck things.
No, exactly. I mean, I guess... Is Donald Trump kind of a counterexample? That he kind of, is more humorous and has a little bit of that? That's why people are so afraid? What do you want, lady? What do you want? What do you really want?
Well, I mean spontaneous as opposed to what she's suggesting, where she's talking about being in control of the emotions. So I guess the opposite of that would just be emotionally incontinent. You can't have an emotionally incontinent leader.
And that's the thing, too, I thought that women were supposed to have the emotional intelligence. So wouldn't that imply that they have the control of the emotions and then therefore more power? This is a little bit of a strange... I'm kind of doubting this, but I would also suggest that people who have one set of those or cluster of those characteristics, they're going to tend toward like having more or less power. And it's almost a little bit of a tautology. Like people with more controlling tendencies have more control of things, and people with less controlling tendencies have less control of things. Like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I mean, let's see. To oppress others, it is necessary to suppress oneself. This is not a condition that is compatible with celebrating life. I don't know.
Well, the thing about suppressing others, like, aren't there, like, the actual activity of people's minds is really chaotic? Like, there are all sorts of things going on in your head at any given moment that you have to, quote unquote, suppress, but that word kind of gives the wrong impression. It's just, there's loads of information that you just don't need to give out to people for one reason or another. But what's actually wrong with that? I mean, if people just said everything that was on their minds, it would. What was that? Causes disharmony. Did she say it would cause much more disharmony if people didn't suppress things?
Well, I guess she thinks that any suppression of things is just designed to hide the reality of power and the ugly realities that we don't want to face, right? And I think maybe she thinks there's an honesty to it. But
Right.
I don't know. I don't know how honest she wants everyone to be. As a white middle-class woman who has spent most of my activist energy for the past decade on issues of race and class, I have much affinity with the men who struggle against sexism. I come from many generations of upper-middle-class wasps, a culture that has control patterns down. Don't express affection or vulnerability. Always maintain your composure. Be cool, calm, collected, and correct. Be in control. As a kid, I had to go on a trip that lasted at least 2 weeks before it warranted a goodbye hug. What is that? I had to go on a trip that lasted at least 2 weeks before it warranted. Oh, she's saying that unless you were gone for at least 2 weeks, you didn't get a goodbye hug. Okay. Not enough hugs. Yeah. Well, this is, I feel like you could almost guess these were the things about her. It seems to be another timeless phenomenon of feminist writers is their, upper middle class, waspy women. I imagine that what motivates me to work against racism and classism is much the same as what inspires men to struggle against sexism. For me, getting rid of institutionalized racism and classism is intimately linked with reclaiming my right to be fully alive, a spontaneous, joyful, loving, sensuous, feeling being. The more I shed my socialized patterns of self-control, the more I heal my alienation and access to communion with others. The more I let go of having to keep everything under control, the more I find myself sharing and working collectively. I move out of isolation. I get to relax and trust the process. For me, giving up self-control does not mean becoming wild. On the contrary, it means becoming vulnerable, affectionate, relaxed, respectful, and trusting. I don't know, it really just seems to me that she has some sort of a chip on her shoulder over her upbringing, and then she's basically retaliating against it.
Right.
Basically, daddy issues, like all feminists.
Yeah. Does that belong on the bingo card? Daddy issues? When we let go of our shields, we feel and subsequently become responsible for our own actions. When agents of control focus on the consequences of their actions, as opposed to some myths about knights and princesses, they resign. In Iron John, Bligh expresses disdain for the young men at a men's retreat who refused to pick up a sword because it was an instrument of violence. I celebrate such men. When we have swords, we need shields. Bligh has provided an alternative for men to reclaim an emotional life. They have moved to the other end of the continuum of control. Let it all out. Go wild. Like taking aspirin for pain, they never have to deal with the cause of the pain itself. Released from suppressing the self on the weekend, it is easier to return to control and the rest of the time. As a result, they don't flinch when they are confronted with the consequences of their collusion with the exploitation of others. Like the protective warrior and the rapist, wild and let's see, wild and control are also two ends of the same spectrum. It is time to shift paradigms. There would be no need for the wild man if men would relinquish the need for control. The real man could relax if the reality of manhood was simply established biologically, not sociologically. This is really ridiculous, though, because if you actually look into what Bly says, he's not going from a sociological top-down perspective. He's working on like a really empirical biological and psychological level. He's saying this is how, I mean, I suppose to some degrees he was looking at like the way societies were structured insofar as he's addressing modern phenomena and modern problems and then saying, well, what changed? But it seems really, really ridiculous to me. I'm not really sure. So she argues that the wild man. Let's see. So let's see. We have a spectrum of protective warrior and rapist, which corresponds to like control and the wild. But she's saying we need to get rid of these spectrums altogether. But she's kind of creating her own juxtaposition of the wild man versus the real man. So I'm not sure if she is saying we need a new spectrum or if she's saying spectrums are bad. In which case, I don't know, is she just making this comparison just because it's like it just like sounds nice? I guess I'm not quite following her argument here. And she's unironically saying real men is real men like Michael Mesner, real men like Kimmel, you know? I'm just like really trying to think. Sorry, is there something I'm missing here? It's like a little puzzle. We no need for the wild man. There's need for control. Because like these men who are motivated against sexism, their principles are to be pro-feminist and pro-gay, and somehow this will help women, right? Step 2, ? Step 3, profit. And
speaking of spectrum, of course spectrum is bad. I mean, Commodore 64 is clearly superior.
I mean, it really feels like magical thinking. It really is just like, you know, if you would just do what I frickin' say, if you would just shut up and get to the back of the bus and do what I'm telling you to do right now, you piece of crap, then then everything will work out for you. I don't, you know, she does a lot of talk about how she's shed these, you know, these patterns of control. I don't believe her. I think that she's just repackaged them. I think that she's doing it right now. I think that's the only way to square this circle. She's just trying to control men and get them back onto her plantation. And she's convincing them that by relinquishing control, that, you know, that they're going to be better off for it. And we're not supposed to question whether or not she is, because she told us, she gave us her word that she has shed these patterns of control. Let's see, it looks like, yeah, we're almost in the end game of this here. Let's close out the end of this page. The next section is called The Nurturing Nature of the Real Men's Movement. Home is the place of nourishment. Men could stop lamenting the absence of a father if nurturing became socially sanctioned behavior for males. Fathers would not need to be remote. I found it interesting that, in all the writings of pro-feminist men who are part of the network emerging out of the annual Men and Masculinity Conference, there were no descriptions on what positive masculinity might be. Wait a minute. Yeah, isn't that a really damning indictment of what she's advocating for? She's saying all of the feminist men who go to these conferences, they don't offer any positive image of what masculinity might be. All right, so let's see how she solves this problem. It is not that they are negative about men. Changing Men, the magazine endorsed by Nomos, is filled with positive male role models, but nowhere is there a list of positive masculine traits. As a woman, I feel I have no special claim to the qualities of love, caring, nurturing, gentleness, tenderness, receptivity, etc. I think we would all benefit from giving up the duality of feminine masculine. I would not miss them if we dropped both words out of our vocabulary. If differentiation is so important, I think our physiological differences are enough to keep each from being mistaken for the other. So there's your dualism bad, right? And you know what? This was kind of the perspective that I took at the time when I was more sympathetic to feminism, which was that why do we have concepts of masculine and feminine if we're trying to have equality? And that, you could theoretically get rid of this conception of masculine versus feminine while still maintaining, like, obvious physiological distinction. Like, I don't think that's that weird of a thing to say. But, I mean, now we're at the point where even the physiological things are becoming taboo to point out. Especially if the physiological changes have anything to do with how a person thinks. So I'm just going to grab the next 2 pages. Looks like there's 3 left here, so I'm just going to grab the last 3. I don't know, any thoughts on the last chunk of this here?
Not really. To be honest.
Why is this one so big? What happened with it? Why is it... What? Why is it like this? Oh my god. Okay, so that's the last bit of it over there. But yeah, we've had violence against women. Deconstructing masculinity we're really getting into here. Divine feminine, I don't think, has shown up so much. We got a little bit... Yeah. Sorry, what?
The argument... I just thought of something else to say about the last part. It's like the discussion over how to define masculinity and femininity is kind of interesting, because some people use those terms in this kind of clinical descriptive way. It's just male traits basically and female traits, but other people use it in this sort of moral way, which I guess is something that you could argue about.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, you can kind of do this thing where you look at men and you look at women and you say, these are things that men tend to do. These are things that women tend to do. And then you could kind of create an empirical definition of the masculine and feminine out of that. And that, I think, makes total sense. Like, I think that's kind of useful, right? But then, yeah, they make it like a normative thing. Like, this is masculinity, therefore men should do this. This is femininity, therefore women should do this. That's the part where I would side with Margo Adair, in that respect.
Yeah, I don't see much point in it either, personally.
Yeah, like all these people who want to like go back to traditionalism, I think it's very antiquated. I think that people really, really deeply, deeply underestimate how easy survival is. Like, like when you point to societies where like these kinds of norms may have had more necessity. These were societies where like starvation was a real risk, but I think that now, because we're in a post-industrial world, if you're in this first world, I really think that we can afford to let people have some level of choice. I think that the real problems are when those choices actually harm others, not that they're refusing to make the absolute optimal choices. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Or that they're refusing to adhere to a way of being that was necessitated by the old incentives that aren't there anymore because of technology.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the irony, right? Is that if these stupid commies would just get out of the way, like, they could have their stupid resource-based economies and their stupid little communes and stuff. It's just you have to let capitalism produce the abundance of wealth that makes that kind of crap viable. And you have to be satisfied with the fact that your shitty little commune is going to be an absolute piece of crap little shithole compared to the futuristic, hyper-awesome future that capitalism is going to have. But the point is you'll get to choose. You'll get to have your choice. but instead they're so just petty and resentful and stupid that they're going to ruin it for everyone because they're so short-sighted and they have this weird nature fetish and they buy into all this victimhood bullshit and historical revisionism. I have found that the atmosphere created by men in the anti-sexist men's movement to be qualitatively different than any settings I have been in before. Last fall, I was invited to facilitate an alliance-building session at the 12th Biannual California Men's Gathering, which was to revolve around the theme of confronting racism. How timeless is that? How timeless is that? You have a men's conference, and what are they going to confront? Racism, right? What are Nomos's first two principles? Helping women and then helping the gays. Oh, we're going to have our conference now. What's the topic? Confronting racism. Oh, what was this? She just complained that they don't have any conception of masculinity, right? Like, it's a goddamn cartoon. It's a cartoon. Nicole Hollander, make that a cartoon. Why isn't that in your cartoon, huh? How come Sylvia's not giving us her smarmy take on that? Okay. I was pleasantly struck by the open display of affection at the event. In the kind-hearted atmosphere of the CMG, everyone was accepted, straight, gay, or bisexual. Throughout the gathering, I had an uncanny sensation. I didn't know what to attribute it to. Then I realized I felt completely safe. Here I was, one of only a half-dozen women at a camp with hundreds of men. The only thing I can compare it to is the sensation one has right after receiving a massage. You realize how tense you were after the tension is gone. It was a profound and unfamiliar experience to be surrounded by men and feel safe. Only men directly engaged in ridding themselves of sexist conditioning are able to reclaim their humanity and openly express warmth. They shed their armor and share their love of life. Can you believe that? She says that this was the only time she was surrounded by men and felt safe. And you know what? I can actually kind of relate to this because I think I kind of had a similar experience after learning about men's issues. And to me, that was like a red-pilling moment, was to realize that, I guess for me, it wasn't that I felt like unsafe. It was just this idea that, I don't know, that there's something more to kind of explain situations where, you know, where like if you think that a man's going to act out violently or be extra critical or whatever horrible male thing you think is going to happen, yeah, I think that if you understand men's issues, then that kind of helps create that pathway to understanding. But of course, that's not how she, you know, has come to this realization, right? Because she is instead just being like, oh, wow, if I can be surrounded by men and no one's trying to rape me. Amazing. Russian Deadpool also thought that Nomos were the good men's rights activists. Yeah, of course he did. Of course he did. That 0% surprises me. Man, it was really surreal to see like a bunch of live streams with him and Bane and then to have all that crap happen. I don't know. Just to see that unfold. It's really kind of weird. I think he's still like in jail, isn't he? Not in jail, I guess he'd be in prison, right? I think he did get convicted. Anyway. Homophobia in our culture is intimately intertwined with sexism. Homophobia makes it taboo to act like a girl, a euphemism for unwillingness to engage in aggression. Homophobia keeps men from having deep emotional bonds with one another. War and aggressive sports are the only culturally acceptable arenas where it is possible to bond with one another. Without the fear of being labeled a sissy, no man would have to prove he was man enough. Bly avoids dealing with homosexuality. As we know all too well, there is nothing unusual about this approach either. But it is particularly offensive when Bly is addressing male-to-male relationship and pulls from Greek myth in which homosexuality is woven throughout, and yet conveniently doesn't tell his readers about that part. He also omits acknowledgement of homosexuality in the traditional tribes he cites. In dramatic contrast, Nomas is gay affirmative. It spawned the Campaign to End Homophobia. I participated in their 1991 national conference, which was held under the banner of Building Multicultural Communities. In my 15 years of activism, I have never been to a conference that was more vibrant and supportive, and yet sharply naming the problems we face. Not once during the entire conference did I hear people ranking who is more oppressed, a preoccupation that has created untold dissension in the women's movement. Yeah, so that's evergreen. That's evergreen as in like perennial. In addition to the open display of affection at both of these events, I appreciated how men acknowledged one another's work. This was a breath of fresh air after the competitive atmosphere that reigns in most conferences. I welcome the real men's movement. At the core of this movement is a reevaluation and redefinition of what it means to be a man. A reevaluation that every man must undertake if we are ever to inhabit a world that is both safe and just. A reevaluation that every man must undertake if he is ever to be free of the perpetual proving that he is man enough, that he is a real man. See, this is the thing, though. She's capitalized real man. Sorry, I need to get this image up here. So real man is what she is a proponent of, right? So she's using it like non-ironically and ironically at the same time. Because how is her standard and what she's asking of men, how is that not a real man standard? I don't think she's explained this.
Yeah. And I thought the little digression about homophobia was a bit funny. It's like,
yeah.
It's also just an interesting thing to note that, and it doesn't come up in this, but it's just like, absolutely no one cares about female homosexuality. Like, I just think it's a funny thing to note, like, really no one cares.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's always been the case. Like throughout all of history, it's just like, oh, that's whatever. Yeah. It's just whatever. In fact, the only time it seems to ever matter is when, like, lesbians realize that no one cares, and then they're like, oh, we gotta make people care about this now, right?
Yeah.
I think there was like one case. There was like one case of a legit lesbian hate crime. And the only reason I'm pretty sure it was legit was because they were both dead. Like, they got stabbed to death. It wasn't just like their shit got burned down mysteriously. But yeah, it's practically mythically rare. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not familiar enough with Bly to know whether or not it's true. Whether or not he goes into that. I guess it'd be kind of interesting to look at his work and then to kind of see where that angle might come into play. Besides the Greek myth, which he's also referring to, is it seems she's obviously alluding to two-spirit, which that is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Like, that is something that I think is like worth examining and makes a lot of sense. Of course, she's not going to examine it here, even though it would have tied into her discussion of masculinity versus femininity really well. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I wonder how many people in Mythopoetic. Oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, there is, I think, one man at least at the Twin Cities Men's Center who's undergone like the warrior training and is a little bit interested in this Mythopoetic movement, and I think he actually identifies as two-spirit. So I should reach out to him. I should get him on Gatriarchy or something, because I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
Because that's one thing that one thing that I hate about the LGBT like spectrum, like their whole advocacy thing, is they make it all look like politicized, stupid bullshit. And like, it doesn't have to be that, you know. If we're kind of just looking at it as like nobody really has a beef with anyone until basically the government's involved, right? Like, nobody really cares about like transsexuals. They only care about like being forced to pay for their surgery, or they only care about them like trying to push it on vulnerable members of society, you know.
Well, yeah.
And like, that's perfectly reasonable, and I think that if you're part of those groups, you know, you should, you know, you it's in your interest to speak up against that when it's being heavily politicized, which is basically kind of the point of the Gatriarchy, is we're speaking out against these gays who have politicized homosexuality and have therefore made it a target, and in some cases a legitimate target.
Yeah. My main issue with the whole trans thing is just I guess, the social contagion of making it fashionable, which seems to have a lot of obvious negative fallout, but there's probably nothing that can be done to arrest it at this point, sadly.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like it needs to have its time as a social fad so that that can die off, and then whatever remains, I suppose, will be the
Yeah, it's like anything. It has to run its course.
because if it has too much opposition, then that's gonna make it like extra transgressive, and that's gonna make it cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I remember at my school, it was the most bizarre thing. Like, it actually was kind of a trendy thing to have alternative sexualities. Like, I've told you about this girl I knew who had like a cock library on her phone, literally, and then one day she just declared herself to be a lesbian, and the phraseology she used was that she realized, quote unquote, that she was gay. It's like, yeah, it's an interesting realization after, behaving as she did. But there were loads of people like that at my school. It was trendy to have an alternative sexuality, and I also know somebody who at one point in school said he was bisexual, and then later on announced that he was trans, like after some time after he left school. And I was hearing all sorts of funny things from his family. Like, I don't think they were very pleased.
Bisexuality is kind of like people do use it as a stepping stone a lot.
Well, the other thing about bisexual is that it's the one that doesn't really require you to prove anything. I mean, I know technically speaking you don't anyway, but you can't call yourself gay and then never do anything with the opposite sex and expect people to take it seriously. But you can call yourself bisexual, and some people, especially a lot of young women from what I've seen, actually will do this and never do anything with the same sex, and apparently never have any intention of ever doing anything with the same sex. But people take it seriously and they insist that you do, and they insist that you're a bad person if you don't.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird thing. Like, I guess the reason you could never have that sort of like a will prove it test for like a bisexual person is that since most people prefer monogamy, like that kind of makes it like a weird thing because like you can't prove you're bisexual in a monogamous way unless the person is, I guess, with a hermaphrodite. But even then, that's kind of a
Right.
stretch. That's kind of a stretch.
Unless you've had enough of a history with someone to have seen them in multiple relationships, I guess, or whatever.
Scooter says most of the trans trenders are women. I agree. I think that that's what I've observed, and it seems to me I have this theory where
Wait, does he mean female to male, or male to
you mean
female?
female to male, right? I think that's what he means, female to male, because that's the thing is I think that with the female to male, a lot of it is like this trans trender kind of like tomboyish little, but they're not even tomboyish. They're just like I don't know, like kind of just like awkward girls that just like to do that, right? And then or really they're just like lesbians basically. And then you have this weird divide among the male to female transsexuals where either it's a gay boy that becomes a woman or it's a straight guy that becomes a lesbian. And I think in the latter case, it's usually like a really, really desperate way to try to get to women, and that those are the most like crazy and unhinged people. Whereas like a gay boy that becomes like a trans woman is probably like on average more mentally stable than like any of
I
the other
think
groups.
I think Benjamin Boyce said on some stream once. I assume he didn't just pull it out of his arse. Like, it sounded like he got it from somewhere. But he said that the majority of trans women aren't attracted to men at all. which is big if true.
Yeah, that is actually.
Yeah.
Wait. So the majority of trans. So the majority of trans men would be lesbians.
Yeah,
And
I
like,
get.
but then yeah. So then the ones that are more like gender fluid or bi or whatever, they're kind of the more like trans trendy.
Yeah.
So basically, as a general rule, like straight people who become trans are probably transgenders, but then gay people who become trans are probably not. As a really, really general rule.
Right, it looks that way.
Hmm.
Oh well.
Oh, I forgot. I needed to do my hashtag not alls. I need just like a what I should. There should be like a spray can with just like water that just like sprays, right? And then you have like a little thing that says like not all, like a not all spray can, like bug spray
Yeah.
almost. Just spray it around before you say anything that's a generalization. I guess you just get a sticker and just put the sticker on a can. That's a brilliant idea. I want that sticker. Who makes that sticker? I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna send an email. I'm gonna send an email and I'm gonna get those stickers because I want that. All right, let's see. I think we're in the end stretch here, so we'll just close out this lovely essay, that has been so enlightening to us by Margo Adair. Let's see. Okay, wait, where are we? I welcome the real men's movement. Yeah, we read that. Okay, so here we are. A reevaluation that every man must undertake is if he is ever to be free of the perpetual proving that he is man enough, that he is a real man. That was a sentence fragment. I'm pissed. I know I sounded like a retard reading that. That was her fault. That was a sentence fragment. Fuck you. Ugh.
Hey, you want to see grammar and syntax errors? Well, it's not so bad because I edited it, but did you get round to looking at, like... Oh, wait, no, never mind, sorry. I can't mention that in a stream. Carry on.
I don't know if you sent me any recent one. I remember you sent me the one of I was gonna say Medina.
Medea, yeah.
Medea. I always think of like Medea, like the black chick, which is a very different story. But
Yeah.
maybe similar in some ways. I wonder. What the fuck is a non-binary gender role? Good question. Well, here's the thing. There's no non-binary like sexual role, right? But a gender role, like gender is, gender is like a performative thing. Like gender, it isn't necessarily correlated to sex. But at the same time, once it's not, I feel like it's kind of like everything, which makes it like nothing. If that makes any sense. I don't know. But it is useful to distinguish between binary versus like bimodal, because I think that does kind of disentangle a lot of the confusion, or makes it worse. Whatever. Men who have uprooting sexism at the center of their consciousness are creating a new culture where they reclaim their humanity, a culture that has shed competition and militarism and replaced them with cooperation and a celebration of life. This movement is teeming with vital activity. I thank the men who help other men stop battering and embark on a road of healing transformation. I thank the men who provide childcare at events. I thank the men who go to the frat houses to help stop date rape. I thank the men who march against porn. I thank the men whose songs and poetry create a culture that celebrates one another as gentlemen. That's gentle-men. I thank the men who create pro-feminist curricula on men's roles in academia. I thank the men who challenge giving visitation rights to abusive fathers. I thank the men who vigil for women shot in the Montreal massacre. Oh my god. This is the number one reason that you should never become a shooter and go and kill feminists. The number one reason is because of the bitching. We're going to hear about this one massacre forever. Like, literally, it's like the only time women were targeted ever, and it's like we can't shut the hell up about it. Every single time there's a shooting, it's always going to be about women because of the Montreal massacre. Thanks a lot. Sorry, had to get out. Whatever. You guys are familiar with that one, right?
No, to be honest.
Oh,
No.
the Montreal massacre. It's like the only case of a person like violently basically killing people because they were women. Specifically feminists. There was a guy who he identified as an anti-feminist, not like an actual anti-feminist, not somebody who like actually cares about men's issues or anything like that, just like he hated feminists. And he went into a school in Montreal, like a university, and shot, I forget how many women. I forget.
Well,
it was, yeah.
I remember for the longest time, feminists were talking about the Elliot Rodger fiasco, which was interesting because he did actually kill a couple of males, I think, but that was
He killed
more
mostly.
men than women, actually.
Yeah, he killed
That's
more
true.
men than women.
yeah,
So
which
it's-
wasn't reported on much.
No, the way that Alison Tiemann described it, the feminist response to Elliot Rodger was that they stepped over the male bodies so they could hold the female bodies up like ghoulish trophies. And I thought, yep, that's literally what happened. So when she says she wants men to act like gentlemen, don't be confused. She does not mean supreme gentlemen.
Yeah, I know it makes me a horrible person, but I do still sometimes watch those old videos of his and find them hilarious.
I mean,
Supreme
taken, yeah, like for their own sake, they weren't. I mean, it was kind of funny.
Yeah, just his incredible narcissism and non-self-awareness and the supreme gentleman registered trademark thing. It was really funny.
It is pretty funny. I can't lie. That was ridiculous what happened to Mumkey Jones. Like, over his whole channel got stricken just for making fun of Elliot Rodger. So, like, you're not allowed to make fun of him, I guess.
No,
Yeah.
Like are they afraid he's gonna do it again? Like, I don't get it. Like,
Maybe.
sorry, Gloves, what were you gonna say?
He has a new channel now, I think.
Yeah, it was called like All Hail Chancellor Susan.
Yeah.
I thank the men who paralleled the Vietnam Memorial with a huge banner bearing the names of 51,000 women who died at the hands of American men between 1957 and 1975. I thank the men who circulate the pledge against violence. I thank the men who have organized Brother Peace Day. I thank the men who have become nurturers of men and women. I say thank you to the men in the real men's movement. Ugh. The end. The end of that. It's enough of that book for today.
We've been going for 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, about 30 minutes of that was douching around with OBS, so next stream will be more efficient. Much more efficient. But I think we've certainly got our bingos. The only things that didn't show up were maybe the Divine Feminine. Yeah, that's it. Oh, and Emotional Labor is kind of dubious. We did have mention of Warrior being bad. She didn't necessarily say it was scary, though. So, yeah, if you had a bingo sheet, I believe that you must have had a bingo. Because there's no way to not have a bingo if only 3 of them were not taken, right? This is like a math question. Yeah, there's no way to create non-bingo by just missing 3. Is there? Mathematically? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, because you have to block all of them somehow. Anyway. This one... Like, I guess the unique flavor of this one is just feminist stabbing themselves or I guess shooting themselves in the foot because when they describe what they think a good male movement looks like, it's just men just passive aggressively, just bitchily shaming men and not addressing any men's issues. Like you'll notice, at no point did she address men's issues in the entire thing. She found time to address women's issues, but it's a reoccurring theme in these that they're responding to the men's movement, and none of them actually care at all about men's issues.
Yeah.
And that's why this book is so infuriating. That's why I've had it for so long, because I just like I hate reading it, and like I hate having to look directly in the face how just stupid these women are. But at the same time, it does feel good to make fun of them because they deserve it.
Well, you described my experience with responding to a really, really bad film called Critics. If you've seen my recent videos, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, those are those people who wrote the articles about Alita, right? And like they clearly
Yeah,
haven't even like watched the movie.
yeah, exactly. That's the funniest part because it's so obvious they haven't watched it because or they were like drunk and fell asleep during the movie because there's no way anyone who watched the movie could get so many things dead wrong.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, I think like I haven't even seen the movie, but I'm like semi-aware of like basic parts about its themes and its plots, and even I was like noticing like, wait a minute, that can't. I'm sure that's not right. Like, it's like not only did they not read it, I don't even think they read the Spark Notes. Just a whole nother level of lazy.
Yeah.
All right, and next time I'll have to get little images to put onto the bingo sheet to actually follow it. So, it's all a learning experience. It's all just you start with something, and then you just add a little bit more. And I'm glad that this OBS worked. My Google Hangouts not working and being obnoxious and causing me to start late ended up being a blessing in disguise because I've realized that this is actually fairly easy to use. So.
Well, necessity often, galvanizes people and makes the learning process much quicker when you have to do it quick. Well, yeah.
Yeah, right. When there's like some necessity. Well, it's just like procrastinating before making something for school. Like Ashley, I told him this story about how I, I had a project for like science, and we were supposed to make an instrument, and I didn't realize it was due that day. So I walked into class and everybody had their instruments already, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna fail. This is worth like so many points, and I'm just gonna like straight up fail. Like, and then I noticed my friend's flute wasn't working, and I was like, I was looking at it and it was a PVC pipe flute, and I thought, hey, like I have my oboe with me. Maybe I can use my oboe reed and we can use your PVC flute to like amplify it, and then we can just say that that's an instrument. And she's like, oh, can you get it to make a sound and then you can play it for me? And I'm like, yeah, let's see what happens. So I was able to jerry rig like the oboe reed to get it to work with her stupid instrument, and then just like on the spot we just like pretended we were a group project. Just like some super lazy thing does.
Oh, this was great.
Yeah, I'm really bad with the hard sciences. But ever since I left formal education and I'm no longer a student, like now I find it really interesting. So I feel like maybe people should just educate themselves through bullshit on the internet. I think that we might have a brighter world if we just do it that way.
Yeah,
So there's my white pill.
I learned more about science out of school than I did in school, probably.
Yeah. God, this woman's face reminds me of. Have you guys seen? There's like the 6 faces or 8 faces or whatever, and you're supposed to say which one like makes you like the most uncomfortable, and then that's supposed to reflect like your dark personality or whatever.
Hmm.
Have you guys seen that?
So,
You know what? This is actually really amusing. Let's go ahead and grab this because it'll be interesting. Let's see. The faces test. I forgot what it was called.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
It was. I forgot what the name of the test was. I'm just gonna Google the faces you look at and the one that makes you most uncomfortable tells you
I found it already.
if you're a psychopath, basically.
I think it's called 8 Faces Test.
Is that
Oh,
it?
it's a non-named Zondi test, I think.
Yeah, 8 faces of grief. I think this is it.
No,
No, what is it? This is the cycle. This is a stupid cycle thing. Oh, the Sanzi test. That's it. God, and these images really creep me out too.
So what is it? The one that creeps you out the most says something.
That's the one that you're suppressing.
Right.
Is the theory. Okay, I'm just gonna try to load this image. I think might be really big, but we'll see if that works. Okay, bye, lady. I'm gonna grab a new thing. Image. This image. And Sanzi test. Sanzi. Okay. And everybody who's in the chat, you can play along too.
Well, the screen is blank, in the stream.
Do you see it now?
Well, the stream lags quite a bit. So, now I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 8 of them, and you're supposed to choose the one that. So the way that you can think of it as a situation is, let's say you get into an elevator, right? And there's one of them is like standing in the corner, and you're just alone with that person. Like, which one makes you the most uncomfortable?
The only one that looks weird at all to me really is 3. But I don't know.
Yeah, because I could make an argument for some of them, like number 1, number 2, they don't really freak me out. Even number 3 doesn't really creep me out that much. 7 seems okay. 8,
Yeah.
I don't understand why that would creep anyone out. 8 seems fine. So like I'm left with the weirdest ones would be 4, 5, and 6. But I think definitely 5. I think for me 5 gives me like a little bit of the creeps. For me, like tier 1 is 5, and then tier 2 is 4 and 6, and then the rest of them I'm just like, whatever, they could be my friends. I don't care. But so these images are this psychologist Sanzi. They're actual like patients of his. So he's using them as like the what am I thinking? Like the epitome, I guess, the poster children of different psychological problems. Okay, so let's see. And then we'll go ahead and get the description to this website. Have it. Let's see. Of course, they're not numbered. Okay, number 1 is the sadist. Number 2 is the epileptic. Number 3 is the catatonic. 4 is the schizophrenic. 5 is the hysteric. 6 is the depressive. 7 is the maniac. And 8 is the dissociative identity disorder. Scooter says 2, 4, 5, 6. Well, we've just diagnosed you as completely messed up, dude. You got problems.
By the way, the funny thing is that this test is considered obsolete because it was the psychometric properties are weak, so it's hard to say.
It's as this is Ouija board level science. But that's kind of just a fun thing.
Also the fact that it's what you are suppressing. Well, it's really reeks of the same bullshit as the whole Freud's shtick. If you deny something, the more you deny it, the more true it is because you're suppressing. And if you're not denying it, well, of course it's true because they're not even denying it. It's
Yeah,
called.
yeah, it's a little dubious. I feel like though there's not nothing to it. There's not nothing to it. But it's just a little too simple. But now we have number 9. Here's number 9. Number 9 is you're the fucking genocidal Nazi feminist. And I think maybe number 9 makes me the most comfortable. Look at the, doesn't it compare? It fits right in. I want to make my own Zanzi test, right? Where I just like replace different black and white images.
She would find all 8 of them unfit for reproduction and forcibly sterilize them. That's the face of your Nazi
5 are a short bus and 4 is a false rape accusation. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, we have been going for quite a while here. That was that was only 10 pages of this stupid book too.
I remember once we talked about like we did like a live response to a video by Steve Shives. The video was short, but we managed to spend like almost 4 hours, responding to it.
Well, that always happens. It always happens. It's so much easier to just like spin bullshit than to actually try to like clean it up and respond to all of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. Well, since we've been streaming, it's like 7 a.m. already. I probably should clock out for now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you getting up so early too and being on here and everything. And it was fun to have you on as well, Ashley. And
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
and glad to see some familiar faces in the chat too. And yeah, we'll be here. I think next week. I think I'll probably just try to keep with this time each week. And only a couple months left until the ICMI 2019. Which, I guess you guys aren't going to that, but I'm very excited to go.
Bye, everyone.
All right, see you guys later. Bye.
See ya.